Chapter 1556 Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch. Chapter 1556 Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch. 1556 Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch. This is the room where we keep all of the Immortal Monarch's information. We call this room the Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch, Xian Kun said as they approached a metal door crafted from a black metallic material adorned with the image of a human figure surrounded by 9 beastly entities. You will be the first guests to visit this room. Welcome to the Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch. Xian Kun proceeded to bite his thumb and press it against the door, feeding it with his blood. The black door slowly creaked open, and she merely swallowed nervously in anticipation. However, once the door was fully opened and they stepped inside, the interior was quite ordinary. Inside, tall wooden shelves hugged every wall in the room, and thousands of scrolls were neatly placed on them. Please, take as much time as you need here. They are all labeled, too. I will be leaving to deal with something else. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call me. I will be in the room across from this one. Xian Kun said to them before closing the door for them. Then, he went into the other room and sealed the door shut. Where should we start? She merely asked as she looked around. Yuan used his divine sense to look at all of the labels quickly and pointed to the shelf by the door. That's the beginning, so we can start from there. She merely nodded and walked to the shelf. Immortal Monarch's first appearance, she read the label out loud. She picked out the scroll labeled with the number 1 and looked at Yuan, asking, "Can I do the honors of reading it?" He nodded with a smile, "Go ahead." Thus, she merely began reading the records of the Immortal Monarch's first appearance. According to the records, the Immortal Monarch's appearance was very sudden, like thunder in a clear blue sky, and when he appeared, there were already 3 divine supremes by his side. When he first appeared in the world, he was already accompanied by 3 supreme entities that would eventually be known as the 9 divine supremes. The first was Dragon Goddess Biyao, also known as the Dragon of Origin, one of the first dragons to exist in the divine heavens alongside the Dragon Ancestor and the Great One. Unlike the other 2 dragons of origin, who spread their names far and wide, Dragon Goddess Biyao preferred being low-key and seclusive. She was rumored to be the strongest divine beast during her time. Unfortunately, she disappeared along with the Immortal Monarch. She merely read, her hands trembling with excitement. The second supreme entity who followed the Immortal Monarch was the Primordial Phoenix, one of the first phoenixes to exist. Her prowess rivaled that of the dragons of origin, except the Dragon Goddess, who was stronger than the other 2 dragons of origin. The Primordial Phoenix's body burned so intensely that she would set entire stars ablaze just by being in its vicinity. She was rumored to have true immortality, where she would not die even if her soul perished. She also disappeared alongside the Immortal Monarch. The third supreme entity that followed the Immortal Monarch was also the most mysterious and unique of the 9 divine supremes. Eater of Stars, once known as a natural calamity that devoured stars and everything unfortunate enough to enter its path as though it was her only purpose. We don't know her name or how the Immortal Monarch tamed an entity like her, but she was the most obedient of the 9 divine supremes. Almost everything about her is a mystery. From her origins to her true strength, they all remained unknown even after the Immortal Monarch's disappearance. The Eater of Stars disappeared alongside the Immortal Monarch but was spotted 900,000 years later. She had returned to being the abyss calamity she was once infamous for, devouring the stars and everything in the galaxy more intensely than before. However, there hasn't been any news of her since her initial re-emergence. Yuan's body trembled after learning that Eater of Stars had returned to her life before she met the Immortal Monarch, most likely because had perished and could no longer satisfy her insatiable hunger. He looked to the ceiling with a woeful frown on his face, wondering if she was still living such a harsh life in the starry sky. If she's still out there, I need to find her as soon as possible so she can live a normal life again. Yuan clenched his fists until they bled, his eyes filled with newfound determination. However, in order to traverse the starry sky without the help of treasures, one must at least be a golden immortal. As for treasures that allow one to traverse the starry sky, most of them are insanely expensive. The Immortal Monarch and these 3 supreme entities traveled the divine heavens for thousands of years with one goal: to stop the war between humans and beasts and start their coexistence. The first intervention by the Immortal Monarch was between the blood mastiffs and humans. Due to their highly desirable blood mastiffs were hunted by humans to near extinction. As revenge for his bloodline, the strongest blood mastiff, known as the Crimson Terror, went on a carnage and destroyed hundreds of human settlements and consumed countless humans. In order to calm the Crimson Terror, the Immortal Monarch had to fight with it. Their fight lasted 700 years until the Crimson Terror was defeated. After their fight ended, the Crimson Terror swore loyalty to the Immortal Monarch and became the fourth Nine Divine Supreme. Crimson Terror, he was the Lord's father. Yuan recalled what the Lord told him not long ago. She merely continued, after turning the Crimson Terror into his subordinate, the Immortal Monarch swiftly dealt with the humans hunting the blood mastiffs. He declared that if any humans hunted blood mastiffs solely to benefit from their existence, or any beasts, for that matter, he would personally wipe them out. This was the true beginning of his campaign to bring peace to humans and beasts. Over the next several thousand years, the Immortal Monarch stayed true to his words, killing humans that hunted beasts for their materials. As for beasts that hunted innocent humans for revenge, the Immortal Monarch also dealt with them. Countless humans and beasts died at the hands of the Immortal Monarch. In the end, the war between humans and beasts was forced to end by a third party with overwhelming power that could wipe out either side. The Immortal Monarch appeared to be a gentle and kind individual at a glance, but he was a true tyrant who made the world obedient with fear and power. However, he also made the world a better place by doing so. A tyrant. That was unexpected. She merely looked at Yuan, who also looked surprised by this information. He thought the Immortal Monarch had ended the war between humans and beasts through other means, but it turned out that he had simply forced it to end by making everyone fear him. To end the war by force, it may be a morally questionable method, but it was undeniably effective, Yuan sighed out loud. No, it may have been the only method. Shi Meili suddenly said. Not just humans, but beasts can also be unreasonable beings. If you wish to have two objects that naturally repel each other joined together, it can only be done with force. Shi Meili said. For example, attempting to make two magnets of opposite poles touch requires force, as their natural state is to repel each other. Yuan nodded, agreeing with her. Shi Meili continued reading the scrolls. Once the war ended, the Immortal Monarch began working towards bringing humans and beasts together, something that could not be forced. In order to do this, he started with befriending the beasts to let them know that it was possible to coexist with humans. The Immortal Monarch started with the Dragon Clan due to his connection with Dragon Goddess Yao. The Immortal Monarch started from top to bottom, so he first met with the Dragon Ancestor, who he quickly befriended. Due to the Dragon Ancestor's immense influence in the Dragon Clan and with two of the three dragons of origin by his side, convincing the rest of the Dragon Clan required little to no effect. After gaining the Dragon Clan's approval, the Immortal Monarch sought the approval of the Great One. However, for reasons unknown, the Great One refused, even antagonizing the Immortal Monarch. Rumors suggested that the Great One was not on friendly terms with the other two dragons of origin and thus could not accept someone they already accepted. The Immortal Monarch and the Great One weren't on good terms with each other? Now that's another piece of information that I did not expect. Yuan muttered after hearing this information. He thought he had some kind of fate with the Great One at the beginning of his journey in cultivation online, but after their last interaction, their relationship with each other had become somewhat clouded. With this new information, his future relationship with the Great One became even more cloudy. It's a pity that we might be enemies in the future. I even learned Dragon's Gaze from him in this life. Yuan sighed inwardly. However, he didn't immediately consider the Great One an enemy, as there were still many uncertain things. Shi Meili continued, one day, the Immortal Monarch and the Great One had a massive fight that shook the divine heavens, and they became sworn enemies since that day. Yuan became speechless. Chapter 1557 Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch, 2. Chapter 1557 Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch, 2. 1557 Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch, 2. Sworn enemies with the Great One? Now that's an achievement one can brag about. Shi Meili chuckled at this information. The Great One was a supreme entity that stood at the pinnacle of the world. To be noticed by him was an honor beyond measure, and to be considered a sworn enemy was a mark of unparalleled distinction. Of course, whether that was a good thing or not was debatable. What do you think caused the fight? She merely looked at Yuan. He shrugged, I can't imagine. From my few encounters with him, I can tell that he's a very prideful and fulfilled individual. I cannot imagine someone like him would fight over something simple. Shi Meili then said, I always thought the dragons of origin were close to each other since they were the first dragons to come into existence and might see each other as siblings, but I guess I was too naive. Don't siblings tend to argue with each other? Yuan, drawing from his own experiences, mused, although most of my time with Yu Rou was pleasant, there were moments when we had fought in the past. So, I would understand it if the dragons of origin had similar experiences. Sibling fights, huh? I totally understand. I am always butting heads with Murong. Shi Meili chuckled. She continued reading the next scroll a moment later. After securing the Dragon Clan's approval, the Immortal Monarch set his sights on the Heavenly White Tiger Clan, a formidable yet relatively small clan renowned for their ferocity and tumultuous nature. Ranked as the 7th most powerful clan, their influence belied their size. The males, in particular, were notorious for their insatiable lust, a trait embedded deeply within their bloodline, which often led them into conflict with other clans. Although the females were not as lustful as the males, they were known to go to extreme lengths to acquire a partner once they fancied someone. Due to their nature, they did not make a good first impression, and the entire clan received a massive beating from Dragon Goddess Yao when the males tried to go after her and the females tried to get overly friendly with the Immortal Monarch. Their leader, the Heavenly White Tiger God, was particularly affected. He was beaten so severely that he lost all sexual desire, becoming as pure and chaste as a monk. He would also become the 5th of the 9 Divine Supremes. Che. The Heavenly White Tigers. Shi Meili sucked her teeth in an annoyed manner after being reminded of her encounter with Bai Shutao. The dragon goddess should have just killed all of them back then, she casually commented. She looked at Yuan and continued, by the way, how's Feng Feng's recovery? I've been feeding her my blood almost every day. Her appearances changed a lot, but I still don't know when she'll return. I see. Hopefully, she'll return to us soon. Shi Meili said before returning to the scroll. During his campaign to receive the approval of all major beast clans, the Immortal Monarch would occasionally hunt the surviving demons that had managed to flee the war. Demons, huh? I never got to see one. They must be all gone by now, right? What a pity. Shi Meili muttered. Yuan smiled and said, you should be glad that you never got to experience their disgusting presence. Unfortunately, demons still exist in this world, and mine. They're just in hiding now. Have you seen one? She then asked. He nodded, yes, and more than just one, unfortunately. Then did you fight them? They're supposedly immortal, with an indestructible body. Their body is definitely destructive. They just have insane recovery, so any damage they take would instantly recover, and unless you get rid of their entire being in one go, they could fully regenerate even from a small chunk of flesh. The only reliable method of getting rid of them would be demon sealing techniques and sacred flames. Unless you have one of these abilities, you don't want to meet a demon. I'll keep that in mind, she said. She picked up another scroll and continued, after traveling for hundreds of years, the Immortal Monarch met the 6th of the 9 Divine Supreme, a powerful divine beast that did not belong to any clan, the divine Yin-Yang Crane. The divine Yin-Yang Crane was a one-of-kind mythical being said to bring immense luck to anyone for the rest of their life if they are lucky enough to see it, and most people live their whole life not seeing it, including immortals that have lived for millions of years. Yet, the divine Yin-Yang Crane had personally appeared before the Immortal Monarch and requested to follow him. The divine Yin-Yang Crane, huh? This is my first time hearing about such a creature. Shi Meili commented afterward. Me too, Yuan said. Is this information helping you regain your memories? She then asked. No, nothing's coming up. Maybe you'll recall something after hearing a little more. We still have thousands of scrolls to go through, after all. She moved on to the next scroll. The seventh to join the 9 divine supremes was the celestial turtle, a divine beast said to have the strongest and most durable body in the divine heaven. The celestial turtle has a massive body that was many times larger than the sun, and due to its size, it could only live in the starry sky. Rumors say that the immortal monarch had built a home for himself and the other divine supremes somewhere on the back of the celestial turtle, but nobody could confirm this rumor. The 8th of the 9 divine supreme was the shadow dweller, a divine beast that can enter and traverse shadows. Not much is known about this divine supreme due to its lack of presence. The 9th and final of the 9 divine supreme is unknown. Nobody but the other divine supremes and the immortal monarch himself have seen the 9th divine supreme's beast form. She merely closed the scroll. There's not much information about the 9 divine supremes here. Maybe they have their own category, she said afterward. Chapter 1558 Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch, 3. Chapter 1558 Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch, 3. 1558 Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch, 3. Although there were still thousands of scrolls left to be read, there were only a few scrolls left that focused on the immortal monarch's journey. The other scrolls were dedicated to miscellaneous information on the immortal monarch and his companions. After spending thousands of years convincing the beast clans that humans could coexist with them, the immortal monarch helped some of the beast clans settle around human settlements, allowing them to experience it firsthand. Of course, the humans weren't happy about having beasts as neighbors, but there wasn't anything they could do to get rid of them, as the beast clans were all protected by the immortal monarch. Someone even the celestial emperor had to be respectful around. Eventually, after many decades of coexistence, humans and beasts grew accustomed to each other's presence. Gradually, they began to converse and build a sense of camaraderie, transforming from wary neighbors to unlikely allies. Unfortunately, not every beast clan managed to coexist with humans. The immortal monarch did not force this on either side and allowed the beast clans that did not want to be around humans to return to their original settlement. Eventually, the notion of humans coexisting with beasts became commonplace. Many beast clans lived alongside humans, collaborating to build thriving cities and communities, breaking down the barriers that once separated them. The immortal monarch, content with the harmony he had fostered, ceased his role as mediator between humans and beasts and vanished from the world. For several thousand years, his whereabouts and activities remained a mystery. When he finally reappeared several thousand years later, he seemed like a different person, transformed by the unknown experiences during his absence. His demeanor had shifted significantly. He appeared more serious, less approachable, and carried an aura of profound gravity. The cause of this transformation was unknown, but it was unmistakable. Not long after his return, the immortal monarch sought a private audience with the celestial emperor. At that time, no one thought much of his audience with the celestial emperor, as they were known to be quite friendly and had many conversations before. However, this time was different. For reasons unknown to anyone but the two, their conversation sparked a fierce battle that lasted 7 days straight. The celestial palace was flipped upside down and turned to ruins as a result. The celestial emperor survived, albeit heavily injured from the battle. As for the immortal monarch, he vanished once more, now branded a criminal. Despite this, the celestial emperor refrained from hunting him down, wary of the immortal monarch's immense power and the might of his 9 divine supremes. News of the immortal monarch attacking the celestial emperor sent shockwaves throughout the divine heaven, raising questions from all corners. Speculations quickly followed, but with so little information to go on, most of these theories sounded like pure fantasy. After a few more thousand years of silence, the immortal monarch reappeared and confronted the celestial emperor once again, with all 9 divine supremes by his side this time. The celestial army was prepared to fight to the death to protect the celestial emperor, but to their surprise, the immortal monarch only uttered a few words to the celestial emperor before leaving. Yet, the celestial emperor's face remained etched with fear long after the immortal monarch had departed. The words uttered by the immortal monarch were only "I control my own fate, nobody else." The immortal monarch vanished from the world after that, never to appear in public again. Shortly after his disappearance, a catastrophic event unfolded. The sky turned a bright red, as if painted with blood, and the divine heaven was split into 9 different realms, becoming what we know today as the 9 heavens. It's evident that the immortal monarch had something to do with the event, but nobody knew why, except for the celestial emperor. However, the celestial emperor remained silent despite being questioned by the entire world. She merely returned the scroll to the shelf with a bewildered look on her face, clearly taken aback by what she had just read. Even Yuan wore a pondering expression on his face. So the immortal monarch caused the divine heaven to become the 9 heavens, and it had something to do with the celestial emperor. I wonder what happened after he accomplished his ambitions that caused him to change so drastically. Yuan muttered to himself. Whatever happened, it was disastrous enough to split the entire world into pieces. She merely commented. Can you think of anything powerful enough to split the divine heaven? Yuan asked. She merely pondered for a moment before shaking her head. While a cultivation god may have enough power to destroy the world, splitting the divine heavens into several pieces while keeping the world intact is a different story. Maybe a treasure? I have no clue, honestly. What do you think? She then asked. It was most likely a fight that caused it. As for the immortal monarch's opponent, there's too little information to go on, so I cannot imagine. A fight? The immortal monarch had the 9 divine supremes, who were considered the most powerful entities in the world, each strong enough to rival a cultivation god. I cannot imagine an opponent the 9, 10 of them couldn't defeat even working together. She merely shook her head, finding it hard to believe anything could defeat the 9 divine supremes when even the celestial emperor was powerless before them, not to mention the immortal monarch himself. Yuan couldn't argue with Shimeli's logic. However, he couldn't shake the feeling that it was definitely a fight that caused it. Suddenly, a particular term appeared inside Yuan's head. Outer God. He recalled the Black Death uttering this word for some reason. What if there are existences out there that defy the laws of this world, with power that surpasses the 9 divine supremes? He wondered inwardly. It wouldn't be the first time something extraordinary existed beyond their knowledge. Take Earth and Cultivation Online, for example. If it weren't for Cultivation Online, Yuan might never have discovered the existence of the 9 heavens, a realm far beyond their world's understanding and reach. Chapter 1559 Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch, 4. Chapter 1559 Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch, 4. 1559 Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch, 4. Well, that's all for the Immortal Monarch's journey. The rest of the scrolls seem to focus more on his companions and the places head visited than the person himself. She merely said as she looked at the other shelves. Let's check out the information on the 9 divine supremes, he said. She merely nodded and excitedly walked to the shelf with a sign that read Dragon Goddess Yao. Dragon Goddess Yao, one of the first dragons to exist, was also known as the Dragon of Origins. Beyond Dragon Goddess Yao and the other 2 dragons of origin, the exact order in which the 3 dragons of origins came into existence remains unknown. Although she is typically in seclusion, slumbering far away from any settlement, whenever she wakes up from it, she would always find someone to spar with, earning her the nickname of Supreme Tormentor. Dragon Goddess Yu's cultivation reached the equivalent of cultivation god sometime past the evil god's era. Rumor has it that she was the first entity to reach such a profound cultivation. We didn't learn of this until she started traveling with the immortal monarch. However, she was someone who got envious easily, especially when it concerned the immortal monarch, and would occasionally throw tantrums. Yuan smiled at this information and recalled the little tantrum she had thrown at the Dragon's Spiral Mountain. The scrolls went on to talk about Dragon Goddess Yu's history, at least the ones publicly known. Due to Dragon Goddess Yu's seclusive nature, not much was known about her in her earlier days, especially before she met the immortal monarch. According to those who fought with her, Dragon Goddess Yao had a remarkably simple routine. She would either slumber or spar with others. If she wasn't napping in the starry sky, she was bullying someone. If she wasn't bullying someone, she was sleeping. After meeting the immortal monarch, Dragon Goddess Yao only slumbered whenever the immortal monarch entered seclusion, and she would only pick fights with those who tried to get too close to him. It was quite obvious that Dragon Goddess Yao fancied the Immortal Monarch, but nobody was bold enough to say it out loud, not even the other Divine Supremes. After spending several hours on Dragon Goddess Yu's information, she merely went on to read about the Primordial Phoenix. The Primordial Phoenix was perhaps the only divine beast who walked amongst the humans before the Immortal Monarch's influence. She had her own business, selling treasures she acquired, amassing a fortune rivaling even the Great One, who was known to hoard treasures like a madman. The Primordial Phoenix didn't spend as much time as the others with the Immortal Monarch and only showed up occasionally whenever she got bored or was needed, like that time when the Immortal Monarch visited the Phoenix clan. The Primordial Phoenix is highly competitive and is often seen butting heads with Dragon Goddess Yao. Eater of Stars was next on Shimeli's reading list, but her shelf was quite empty when compared to the others, with one exception, the 9th member of the 9 Divine Supreme. Most of the information on the Eater of Stars was about her past before she met the Immortal Monarch. Besides Dragon Goddess Yao, she spent the most time with the Immortal Monarch, to the point where it was nearly impossible to see the Immortal Monarch without her somewhere around him. The Eater of Stars was especially protective of the Immortal Monarch. If she perceived any threat to him, no matter how minor, she would immediately become aggressive, ready to unleash her wrath on anyone who dared to harm him. Nobody but the 9 Divine Supreme knew this, but the Immortal Monarch kept her hunger satisfied with his own blood, so it was only natural for the Eater of Stars to be protective of him since he was the reason she could live a normal life. After finishing the scrolls on Eater of Stars, Crimson Terror was next. Despite the nickname he was given, Crimson Terror wasn't born a killer. In fact, he disliked violence and would always find a method to avoid it. Unfortunately, in order to protect his own clan from the greedy humans, he was forced to kill and kill until one day, he lost his mind and became nothing but a crazed killer. If the Immortal Monarch hadn't snapped him out of it, the Crimson Terror would have inflicted significant damage not to just human society but the beast clans, as well. After being tamed by the Immortal Monarch, Crimson Terror traveled the world in his human form to fix the damage he'd done to the innocent. Up next, we have the Heavenly White Tiger God. Just as she merely reached for a scroll, the door opened, and Xian Kun walked inside. "How's everything so far?" he asked them. "I've learned a lot of new things from here, and we're just getting started," Yuan said. "I'm glad. Anyway, I have a new guest who needs my attention, so I will not be available for a little. This guest must be fairly important," Shimeli causally said. "Yes, this individual is not only from the upper heavens, but she's also from the immortal clans that are closely related to the Immortal Monarch." "Someone from the immortal clans?" Yuan raised an eyebrow, his interest piqued. "Which clan is she from?" "The Heavenly White Tiger clan." Yuan narrowed his eyes at this information. Could it be her? Yuan recalled the woman who showed up to protect Bai Shutao. Shimeli also had similar thoughts. For her to show up in this place, she must be looking for information. Yuan thought to himself. "Then, I'll let you return to your study now." Xian Kun closed the door and went downstairs to meet this individual while Yuan and Shimeli returned to reading scrolls. Even if this individual turned out to be the same woman they met, they had no reason to be in her business and decided to just ignore it for the time being. Chapter 1560 Bai Ning. Chapter 1560 Bai Ning. 1560 Bai Ning. Once Xian Kun arrived at the reception area, he could see a beautiful young woman standing with Xian Wei, who had a respectful smile on his face, a stark contrast to the way he greeted Yuan and Shimeli. "Welcome to the Pavilion of Knowledge, Lady Bai Ning. How can we assist you today?" Xian Kun respectfully bowed to her. Bai Ning looked at him nonchalantly and said, "I heard that this is the place to go for information. Is that correct?" "That depends on the type of information you're looking for, but generally, yes. We have information on pretty much everything, including information that is normally only available in the upper heavens." Xian Kun spoke with confidence. The Pavilion of Knowledge gathered information from not only the fourth heaven but also all the other heavens. They achieved this by contacting other information-gathering agencies in the upper heavens and sharing information with each other. "Good. I am looking for someone," Bai Ning then said. She continued as Xian Kun raised an eyebrow. This individual has long golden hair and golden eyes, a unique scent that does not belong to any beast clan that I know of, but his aura did resemble that of the dragon clan slightly. He wields a golden soul weapon shaped like a spear that can easily penetrate spiritual energy. He might have a habit of wearing masks. Oh, he's also immensely talented, being able to fight even spirit enlightenment despite being a mere spirit king. Xian Kun wore a look of disbelief on his face after hearing the description of someone who sounded like pure fiction to him. A spirit king that can fight spirit enlightenment? That doesn't sound feasible at all. Xian Wei subconsciously uttered this after hearing such a ridiculous claim. Bai Ning narrowed her eyes at him and sneered, "Are you calling me a liar?" "And not at all. But how can you be sure this information is correct?" "Because I encountered and fought him myself in the third heaven. Not only did he match my strength, but he also humiliated my little brother, who had to unseal his cultivation to spirit enlightenment. Even then, it wasn't enough. A spirit king from the third heaven was able to match you? That sounds ludicrous, but since it's coming from you." Xian Kun swallowed nervously. He began pondering seriously, but nobody that fit the description came to mind. There's no way a genius like that would go unnoticed. In that case, he must be a newcomer. Do you have any more information on this individual? Xian Kun asked. Bai Ning recalled every little detail Bai Shutao told her to Xian Kun, who listened with great interest. "I see. Truly a fascinating individual. As for that spear you mentioned, once Xian Kun was given more details on the soul weapon wielded by this individual, he immediately thought about the dragon's soul, something the Shi family had in their possession even before they entered the ancient dragon city. A soul weapon that sounds like the dragon's soul, and with the young lattice recent emergence, is this just a coincidence, or? Xian Kun wondered inwardly, not daring to rush any conclusions. Oh, one more thing. This masked individual had some weird technique. Right when I was about to strike him, he shouted halt at me in a commanding tone, and as though I was his servant, my body obeyed even though my mind rejected it. Bai Ning suddenly said. What? Xian Kun frowned upon hearing this, and he asked, "Can you repeat that one more time? And how you felt in more detail?" Bai Ning closed her eyes and recalled the moment her body stopped working. With a single word, that individual was able to take complete control of my body, forcing it to listen to his commands regardless of my own will. If he told me to kill myself at that moment, I would have probably done so. I have never felt so powerless in my life. Bai Ning wore a nervous expression on her face as she recalled the sensation of being powerless, something she had never experienced since birth. Xian Kun swallowed nervously and took a deep breath before speaking. "I don't want to startle you or anything, Lady Bai, but what you described sounds exactly like an authority, something only the purest of royal bloodlines can wield." "What?" Bai Ning frowned upon hearing this and said, "You mean to tell me this individual has the authority to command the heavenly white tiger's bloodline when we are already the purest of our bloodline? That's nonsense. The heavenly white tiger clan already stood at the peak of their bloodline, so it was impossible for another bloodline to have the authority to command them. In that case, I can only think of one possibility, even though it may sound even more ridiculous than the last." Xian Kun's body trembled at this thought. "What is it?" Bai Ning urged. After taking a deep breath, Xian Kun muttered in a shivering voice, "Immortal Monarch's dominion. That's the only authority that could possibly surpass the heavenly white tiger's authority." "Are you insane?" Bai Ning suddenly roared, her voice filled with anger. "You dare suggest that the Immortal Monarch is still alive and that the person I fought was him?" Just the thought of raising a finger against the Immortal Monarch left Bai Ning in utter disgust and anger, as she would rather die than do such a thing. Even if the Immortal Monarch were alive, he wouldn't be a spirit king. Moreover, why would the Immortal Monarch be bullying my little brother? After Bai Zetao's fight with Yuan, Bai Ning brought Bai Shutao, who was half dead after the heavenly tribulation, back to her family, where he had to explain everything. However, Bai Shutao gave a fake story, so Bai Ning was still unaware of the whole situation and thought Yuan was just targeting the heavenly white tiger clan for whatever reason. I know how ridiculous it sounds, but it's the only explanation. Furthermore, Xian Kun hesitated for a moment before continuing, the Immortal Monarch, he's alive. What did you just say? Bai Ning and Xian Wei stared at him with wide eyes, their faces filled with shock. Chapter 1561 Bai Ning, 2. Chapter 1561 Bai Ning, 2, 1561 Bai Ning, 2. Bai Ning's entire being froze like a stone statue after being told that the Immortal Monarch was alive. Her body trembled after a moment of silence, and she suddenly reached for Xian Kun's collars. Once she got a hold of his robes, she lifted him into the air and roared, "I swear to God, if you're messing with me." Xian Kun was startled by her sudden aggression and hastily said, It's true. This information has already been verified through the Heavenly Scroll of Validity. The chances of this information being fake are almost zero. Who gave you this information? She growled. Xian Kun hesitated to reveal this information since the Pavilion of Knowledge prided itself on its confidentiality. If he revealed a customer's name, it would set a dangerous precedent and, if exposed, would sink their reputation to the bottom of the sea. Please forgive me, but I cannot reveal a client's information, especially if that individual may have a connection with the Immortal Monarch. I beg for your understanding, Lady Bai. Xian Kun said, his body soaked in cold sweat. Bai Ning froze again and, after a moment of silence, released Xian Kun and said, My apologies. I got a little too excited after learning of the information. You're right. This individual likely has connections with the Immortal Monarch to have such valuable information. I almost made a rash judgment there. Xian Kun sighed in relief and said, Thank you for your understanding. Although I cannot reveal this individual's information to you, I can speak with him and see if he would be willing to meet you. Bai Ning's eyes flickered after hearing this, and immediately nodded, Please do. I must speak with this individual, no matter what. If there's anything I can do that would increase the chances of meeting him, let me know. Xian Kun pondered for a moment before responding, I'm not sure, but he seemed very interested in information related to the Immortal Monarch. If you have information to share with him, he'd have a reason to speak with you. Information on the Immortal Monarch, right? I have plenty of that. Bai Ning quickly agreed. As an Immortal Monarch enthusiast, Bai Ning collected all sorts of information on the Immortal Monarch, and being part of an Immortal clan, she has access to information not available to the public. What about the individual you wanted to find? Xian Wei suddenly asked. I can deal with him later. This takes priority, she said. Then I'll be back. You can rest in the guest room in the meantime. Xian Kun said. You make it sound like you'll be able to contact this person soon. Well, he is currently in the Pavilion of Knowledge, after all. What did you say? Bai Ning was pleasantly surprised by this news. You don't mean? Xian Wei swallowed nervously as he thought of their recent rude guests. Xian Kun left shortly after, leaving Xian Wei and Bai Ning alone. Sometime later, Xian Kun opened the door to Chronicles of the Immortal Monarch. Young master, I apologize for disturbing you, but the guest from the Heavenly White Tiger clan would like to meet you. Due to her background, I shared with her the information you told me. Xian Kun said with an apologetic look on his face. She wants to meet me, huh? Yuan didn't immediately give an answer. She said she's willing to share information on the Immortal Monarch if you agree to meet with her. Since she's from an Immortal clan, her information would undoubtedly be valuable. Yuan pondered for a moment before nodding his head, sure, I'll go meet with her. Thank you. Xian Kun bowed to him, feeling relieved. She merely placed the scroll in her hands down and asked through divine sense, should I come with you? No, I can speak with her alone. She might also recognize you. Yuan said. All right. She merely nodded. Yuan left the room while she merely continued to read the scrolls. Sometime later, Xian Kun brought Yuan to Bai Ning. The moment Bai Ning saw Yuan, she raised an eyebrow. She didn't recognize Yuan but felt like they had met somewhere. Hello, I am Bai Ning of the Heavenly White Tiger clan. How should I address you? Knowing that he might be connected to the Immortal Monarch, Bai Ning spoke to him in a respectful tone. Yuan, he said. I heard you wanted to speak with me. What is this about? He then asked. I heard from Xian Kuan here that you were the one who told him the Immortal Monarch is alive. If you don't mind me asking, how did you acquire this information? I will share with you everything I know about the Immortal Monarch. In case you don't know, the Heavenly White Tiger God, our ancestor, was one of the 9 divine supremes that followed the Immortal Monarch, so we know more than most. I don't mind telling you, but can you tell me what you plan on doing with that information first? Yuan said. What I plan on doing? Bai Ning raised an eyebrow, as she hadn't thought about it yet. If the Immortal Monarch is truly alive, I want to meet him. She responded in a low voice after a moment of silence. And what are you going to do once you meet him? Yuan continued to ask. I will serve him just as the 9 divine supreme had. That is my dream, she answered with a serious expression on her face. And what if he refuses? That's... Bai Ning was left speechless. I haven't thought that far, but I will not give up even if it's the last thing I do. Yuan remained silent for a moment before speaking. If you want to meet the Immortal Monarch that badly, I can let you meet him. What? Really? You know where the Immortal Monarch is? Bai Ning's eyes widened with shock. Yes, but you'll have to do something for me. I will do anything, she answered without hesitation. Well, see about that, Yuan said with a mysterious smile on his face. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1562 Vial of Blood. Chapter 1562 Vial of Blood 1562 Vial of Blood. So, what do you need me to do? Bai Ning urged in an impatient manner. Yuan calmly said, You have a brother, right? Yes. I have several younger brothers, in fact. Why are you asking? Bai Ning raised her eyebrows with a confused look. I am looking for one of them. According to what I was told, he wields a pair of gauntlets. Yuan said, pretending he didn't know Bai Shutao. Gauntlet. I know 3 of them that wield them. Any more specifics? I heard he came down to the lower heaven for some mission. Oh, then you must be talking about Bai Shutao, our youngest. Why are you looking for him? I met him not long ago and couldn't finish our conversation because he had to leave suddenly. I'd like to speak with him and repay a little debt I owe him. Yuan said with a calm smile on his face. Is that so? Bai Ning's face became a little nervous as she continued. Unfortunately, Bai Shutao was heavily injured not long ago, so I had to send him back home to the upper heavens, so you might have to wait until he recovers. Heavily injured in the lower heavens? What happened to him? Yuan acted surprised to hear this information. He was viciously beaten by this masked individual. What? Why would this individual do such a horrible thing? Yuan's eyes widened with shock. My brother claimed it was a random attack, that he has no idea why he was being attacked. However, Bai Shutao is a troublemaker, so I wouldn't be surprised if he offended someone he shouldn't have. This individual was insanely talented and powerful. There's no way someone like that would attack Bai Shutao without reason. This is also why I came to the Pavilion of Knowledge, to find this individual who attacked my younger brother. Bai Ning clenched her fists in frustration. In her head, she couldn't care less about avenging Bai Shutao. The real reason she wanted to find this individual was to fight him again and to learn about his mysterious power. What will you do once you find this individual? Yuan asked out of curiosity. Well, I am going to find out the real reason he attacked Bai Shutao, but regardless of the reason, had nearly crippled someone from the Heavenly White Tiger clan, so he will need to pay for his crimes. I will bring him back to my family so they can deal with him. Bai Ning said. I see. I hope you find this individual and find justice for Bai Shutao. Yuan said. As for meeting with the Immortal Monarch, he's not in the condition to meet anyone right now, anyway. I'll let you meet him in the future. What? Is he okay? You make it sound like he's injured or something. Bai Ning's face darkened, acting like a mother about her missing child. It's complicated, but you'll find out in the future. Anyway, can you share your information on the Immortal Monarch with me? After a moment of silence, Bai Ning nodded her head, and she retrieved a jade slip from her spatial ring before handing it to him. This is my personal logbook. I logged all of my information on the Immortal Monarch here. You can borrow it for now. Yuan accepted the jade slip and said, "Thank you. As a token of our new friendship and to further develop our trust in each other, I would like you to have this." Yuan retrieved an object from his spatial ring and offered it to her. This is... Bai Ning raised her eyebrows at the vial of blood before her with a puzzled face. Why was he giving her blood, and who does it belong to? However, not wanting to be rude, Bai Ning accepted it without any question. Thank you," she said in a stiff voice. The vial was the length of her finger, and only a fourth of it contained blood. "It was nice meeting you. Then I'll go back upstairs now." Yuan turned around and left before Bai Ning could question him about the blood. Once Yuan left, Bai Ning opened the vial and took a sniff of the blood. Her senses immediately went crazy from the sweet scent of the blood, and her body trembled uncontrollably from excitement. What a profound scent. Whose blood does it belong to? Even Xian Kun could smell it from afar, and the scent made his mouth watery. I don't know, but I really want to taste it for some reason. Bai Ning swallowed nervously. Usually, she'd never even think about tasting a stranger's blood, but the sweet scent was too enticing and compelled her to do so. I'll just taste a drop to see if I can identify it. Bai Ning carefully retrieved a drop of blood from the vial with her chi manifestation and placed it in her mouth. The instant the drop of blood touched her tongue, an overwhelming sensation surged through Bai Ning's entire being, as if she had been touched by the divine itself, baptized in an ethereal purity that transcended all comprehension. Good heavens, she cried out loud and fell to her knees, nearly dropping the vial of blood in the process. What the? Lady Bai. Are you okay? Did that bastard poison you? Xian Wei exclaimed in a terrified voice after seeing her drastic reaction. Bai Ning didn't respond to him and merely stared toward the sky with a dazed look on her face. Lady Bai. Xian Kun swallowed nervously. It's so fucking delicious," she muttered in a dumbfounded voice. Huh? Excuse me? This otherworldly taste that's unlike anything I've tasted before, this to die for taste. Only one individual could make a divine beast fall to their knees with the delicious taste of their blood, the Immortal Monarch. This blood definitely belongs to the Immortal Monarch. Bai Ning exclaimed as she came to a realization. The Immortal Monarch's blood? Impossible. Xian Wei cried out loud, his voice filled with disbelief. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1563 Immortal Monarch's Blood. Chapter 1563 Immortal Monarch's Blood. 1563 Immortal Monarch's Blood. Both Xian Wei and Xian Kun looked as though they just witnessed their ancestor's ghost after hearing Bai Ning's words. Lady Bai. I don't mean to doubt you, and I apologize in advance for saying this, but could you be mistaken? Xian Kun said in a nervous voice. Mistaken? Me? Impossible. Although I have never tasted the Immortal Monarch's blood before, I have read enough about it to recognize it if I ever tasted it. This blood is, without a shadow of a doubt, the Immortal Monarch's blood, and I am willing to bet my life on it. Bai Ning spoke with confidence. If you're that certain. Xian Kun stared at the vial of blood and swallowed nervously. He didn't wholly believe Bai Ning, but it wasn't as though he could make her use the scroll of validity, as that would basically tell her he didn't trust her. However, if there's even 1% that the blood genuinely belonged to the Immortal Monarch, he wanted it. Lady Bai, this may be imprudent of me, and allow me to apologize in advance again, but, no. Bai Ning responded before he could even finish his sentence. She turned to glare at him and continued, You were going to ask me to give you some of this blood, right? I refuse. I don't care what you have to offer me. I won't give you even a single drop. Xian Kun began sweating profusely at her words, but he still remained hopeful. I beg you, Lady Bai. You have about a dozen drops of blood inside that vial. Can't you just spare a single drop for this old man? It would mean the world to me. Bai Ning sneered and said, I'll think about it if you can find me the individual who attacked Bai Shutao. Xian Kun's jaw dropped. After a moment of silence, he sighed out loud, I'll be blunt, Lady Bai. It's almost impossible to find someone like that with so little information. The only thing we know about this individual is that he's a genius who can fight multiple realms above his own cultivation and that he wields a golden spear that can penetrate spiritual energy. And there's a high probability that he's from the Dragon Clan. Bai Ning quickly added. Xian Kun sighed again, I will ask my informants in the third heaven to see if they have any information. It might take a couple of days for a response. That's fine. I planned on staying here a little longer, anyway. Bai Ning nodded as she looked at the upper floors of the tower. Meanwhile, Yuan returned to Shimei's side. How'd it go? Did she recognize you? Shimei asked. He shook his head, no, but I got the feeling that she finds me familiar. What did you talk about? It was over pretty fast, too. It wasn't much. She asked me how I knew about the Immortal Monarch being alive. So, did you lie to her? No, I didn't lie. I didn't even tell her anything. He casually shrugged. Huh? Shimei raised an eyebrow. She stopped caring about that when I told her that I could set up a meeting with the Immortal Monarch for her. And you intend on keeping your word? Of course, but she'll need to do something for me first. I wasn't able to kill Bai Shutao back then, so I'm giving her the chance to set up another meeting for me. Shimei's jaw dropped at his words. And then what? You'll reveal your true identity after killing Bai Shutao in front of her? Pretty much. That's pretty cruel. I wonder how she'll react, she muttered. Yuan smiled and said, I get the feeling that she'd do anything for the Immortal Monarch. I don't doubt she'd even kill her own brother if the Immortal Monarch told her to. Then you might as well do just that. At least that'll save you some energy. No, I won't feel satisfied unless I squeeze Bai Ziteo's life away with my own hands for attacking you and Feng Feng. Are you sure you want to do that? He's a descendant of the heavenly white tiger god, one of the 9 divine supremes. I won't blame you for forgiving him. Shimei wondered if he'd feel bad about killing one of his followers' descendants. It's not like he's the heavenly white tiger god's son, or even grandson. If the heavenly white tiger god were here, he'd probably kill Bai Shutao before I could even get to him. Yuan shook his head. You make a fair point. Shimei mumbled with a look of realization. Anyway, I'll deal with it when we get there. For now, let's check out the information that the woman gave me from meeting her. Yuan retrieved the jade slip and began reading its contents. Half of the information in the jade slip talked about the heavenly white tiger god's achievements during his time as one of the 9 divine supremes. The other half was mostly scattered information about the Immortal Monarch, such as potential hobby, his height, his woman type, and how delicious his blood tasted. There's not much in here that I don't already know, but there is some useful information about the heavenly white tiger god and their heavenly white tiger clan, Yuan muttered after reading all the information, feeling as if he had just perused the diary of a love-stricken teenager. The text was filled with effusive praises for the Immortal Monarch, offering more adulation than substantial information. Most of the information left in this room are rumors rather than actual facts, said Shimei. Yuan nodded and said, then let's read through them quickly and leave. A few hours later, a familiar voice resounded inside Yuan's head, my liege, I have found this immortal you're looking for. Oh. Where are they? They are actually very close to your current location, hiding on a remote island in the middle of the Purple Sea. Dong Yi said. Perfect. Yuan smiled at this information. Chapter 1564 Meeting the Escaped Immortal. Chapter 1564 Meeting the Escaped Immortal 1564 Meeting the Escaped Immortal. After learning that the escaped immortal was close to his location, Yuan said to Shimei, "Let's stop here." Something else came up. Worried that the immortal might leave before he could finish the scrolls in this place, Yuan decided to deal with the immortal first, then return to the Pavilion of Knowledge to finish the rest if possible. Huh? What came up? Shimei lifted her head to look at him with a raised eyebrow. Since Dong Yi spoke to Yuan through divine sense, she had no idea about their conversation. Yuan gave her a quick brief of his situation. There is a place called the Nine Heaven Eternal Grotto that imprisons some of the most dangerous immortals in the world. A few of them escaped recently, and one of them managed to enter the fourth heaven. That immortal happens to be close by, so I am going to kill them real quick. What? An immortal? Shimei was shocked, speechless by such information. You make it sound like killing an immortal is a simple thing to do. They are so powerful that even a divine ancestor would not last a single strike from them. And they won't die even if you destroy their body. Shimei exclaimed. I doubt I will be able to kill an immortal in their perfect condition. This immortal is greatly weakened due to being in the fourth heaven, so I have a good chance of defeating them. Even if their cultivation is weakened, they can still use powerful techniques and immortal chi, which mortals cannot resist. Yuan confidently smiled and said, I know it's dangerous, but I have to do this. You should stay here. I don't want you to get caught up in our fight. No. Let me fight with you. Shimei quickly shook her head. Yuan sighed, that's not possible, and you should know that. I won't have the leisure to protect you during our fight either. Shimei clenched her jaws tightly in frustration, but she couldn't argue with Yuan. She knew that she would die long before she could even react if she fought with an immortal. After a moment of silence, she sighed out loud, in this entire universe, you're probably the only mortal who would dare to fight an immortal. But that's also what I like about you. Don't die on me, Yuan. I promise you that I'll return. Yuan nodded with a serious face. He left the room shortly after while Shimei remained inside. Are you leaving already? Yuan encountered Xian Kun on his way out. I'll be leaving for a little, but I'll be back. Shimei will stay here. Yuan said. Is that so? By the way, that vial of blood you gave to Lady Bai, do you have more? Even a single drop is enough. If so, I'd like to purchase it from you. Xian Kun decided to try his luck with Yuan since it might be impossible to get Bai Ning to part with her supply. Yuan shook his head and said, sorry, but that's all I have. Is that so? Xian Kun wore a dejected expression on his face, looking like he'd been rejected by the love of his life. After leaving the Pavilion of Knowledge, Yuan asked Dong Yi for directions to the escaped immortal. If you fly southwest, you should arrive at a small island in 3 days. The escaped immortal is hiding there. Dong Yi said. All right. Without hesitation, Yuan started flying toward the southwest. 2.5 days later, he could see a small island on the horizon. This island had a small mountain on it, and it was surrounded by purple trees. Yuan didn't want to alert the immortal with his divine sense, so he restrained from using it on the island. However, Dong Yi was a different story, as his divine sense would be too powerful for the immortal to sense. Where is he? Yuan asked. Hidden in one of the mountain caves. They've hidden their presence and are trying to recover spiritual energy. If you want to fight them, now is the best time. Dong Yi said. Yuan nodded and took a moment to prepare himself. After taking a deep breath, he retrieved Starry Abyss before releasing his aura. He purposefully avoided using number 1 under heaven to see how much he could handle without her. Omicron M, come out, he roared. The instant the immortal sensed Yuan's presence and powerful aura, they immediately thought about escaping. However, they stopped when they realized that Yuan was alone and was a mere spirit king. After a moment of pondering, the immortal emerged from their hiding spot to confront him. Yuan narrowed his eyes at the immortal's appearance, shrouded by a mysterious mist, looking like a cloud that could block divine sense. If divine sense doesn't work, let's try divine gaze, Yuan used divine gaze, and to his surprise, he could see through the mist, but the immortal's true appearance remained as a silhouette. The figure inside the mist narrowed their eyes after sensing Yuan's divine gaze. A mere spirit king using divine gaze only those in the divine realm can use? Who is this kid? The immortal wondered inwardly. Hey, why don't you show me your real appearance? Yuan suddenly spoke. And why would I do that? The immortal spoke in a hoarse voice. I'm just curious. I want to see my opponent before fighting them. You want to fight me? A mere mortal? Do you even know who I am? The immortal expected many things from Yuan, but a fight was not one of them. They were also confident that Yuan was not suppressing his cultivation and was a genuine spirit king. Yes, I do. You're an immortal who escaped the 9-heaven eternal grotto, right? And you still want to fight me despite knowing that. Why are you trying to kill yourself? The immortal couldn't believe what they were hearing. Who said anything about wanting to die? You may be an immortal, but your cultivation is currently restricted to the divine king realm. Yuan smiled. The immortal was speechless. They couldn't fathom how Yuan could talk so confidently before someone several realms above his own strength. To think I'd be looked down upon by a mere mortal, ha ha ha. The immortal suddenly laughed out loud. Very well. I shall teach you the difference between a mortal and an immortal today, at the cost of your insignificant life. The immortal roared, his aura skyrocketing the next second. Chapter 1565 Fighting the Escaped Immortal. Chapter 1565 Fighting the Escaped Immortal. 1565 Fighting the Escaped Immortal. When the immortal released their cultivation, Yuan barely felt its pressure. However, they didn't release all of it, and it only went up to spirit enlightenment. The immortal never intended to fight Yuan with their full power, thinking it would be an overkill. Moreover, they were still hiding from the pursuers from the upper heavens. If they released their full cultivation, the pursuers would definitely find them in a heartbeat. There's no need to expose my location just to kill a mere mortal. It'll end this before he can even realize what had killed him. The immortal laughed inwardly before they flew at Yuan with immense speed. Seeing that the immortal had no intention of fighting him with their full strength, Yuan smiled and said, "You'll also regret underestimating me." Although the immortal was going easy on him, Yuan didn't have the leisure to go easy on the immortal. The immortal, still with the appearance of a floating cloud, flew at Yuan. Yuan immediately used divine gaze to see how the immortal was going to attack him. Shah! As though the immortal had turned into a porcupine, hundreds of needles made entirely of spiritual energy burst out of the cloud and flew toward Yuan. Yuan cloned the starry abyss 10,000 times and used them to deflect the needles while attacking simultaneously. Cheap tricks. The immortal roared and released some more of their aura, which was strong enough to block the starry abyss and, like an invisible wall, halted all of the attacks. Yuan narrowed his eyes slightly at the sight of this. Unlike number 1 under heaven and dragon's soul, the starry abyss is too weak to do anything. Even if I managed to hit him, it wouldn't do any damage. Due to its lack of power, Yuan retrieved the starry abyss. I definitely need to take some time strengthening the starry abyss after this, he thought to himself as he wielded dragon's soul next. 2 soul weapons? The immortal narrowed their eyes at dragon's soul, surprised that a mortal could wield 2 soul weapons. They could also feel an unfathomable aura emitted by dragon's soul. Yuan used his movement technique to instantly close their distance, approaching the immortal without hesitation. Once he was close enough, he began thrusting dragon's soul at the immortal. The immortal was greatly shocked when the dragon's soul touched their mist and destroyed it with ease. Fuck. What the hell is that soul weapon? The immortal was left terrified after seeing their unique mist being destroyed when it was indestructible to weapons. To think he'd have a weapon that could cut through my mist. What fucking bad luck. The immortal cursed inwardly after realizing they'd met their worst enemy. Looks like this weapon is effective on you. Yuan smiled after seeing how far the immortal had backed up. So what? In the end, it's still useless if you can't hit my actual body. The Immortal sneered. We'll see about that. Yuan went on the offensive while the Immortal focused on avoiding his dragon's soul, occasionally throwing powerful spiritual attacks at Yuan. After just several exchanges, it was clear to Yuan that this Immortal was a cultivator who focused on spiritual techniques instead of using weapons like the majority of cultivators out there. What the hell is up with this mortal human? He's just a mere spirit king, yet he fights like he has countless years of combat experience. The Immortal was bewildered by how skillful Yuan was in combat. None of his movements were wasted, and his decisions seemed instant, even reading several seconds ahead. The Immortal had fought tens of thousands of immortals even before they were sent to the Nine Heavens' Eternal Grotto, but they'd never fought someone half as experienced and skillful as Yuan. My cultivation may be superior, but this bastard's combat skills are unfathomably high. It's like I am fighting someone in the God Ascension realm. The Immortal began doubting whether Yuan was actually a spirit king or actually a God Ascension realm cultivator in disguise. Yuan's combat experience through the God of War helped him narrow the gap between him and the Immortal, but it was far from enough. Enough! The Immortals suddenly roared, and their cultivation entered the divine realm, becoming a divine warrior. The Immortal's speed and overall prowess increased significantly after the boost. Yet, it still wasn't enough to overwhelm Yuan. Is this guy really human? How is he fighting me while only having the cultivation of a spirit king? He should have died long ago. The Immortal was baffled by Yuan's nonsensical existence. There were plenty of unique and heaven-defying immortals inside the Nine Heavens' Eternal Grotto, but none of them were as ridiculous as Yuan, who could fight several realms above his own with ease. Usually, one would be considered talented if they could fight someone 1 or 2 levels higher, a genius if they could battle someone at least 3 levels above, and only a true prodigy would be able to challenge an opponent an entire realm higher. Yuan was currently fighting someone 4 realms above his own. Not only that, but he was also fighting someone 1 major realm above. The difference in prowess between Spirit King and Spirit Enlightenment was insignificant compared to Spirit Enlightenment and Divine Warrior. If the former was akin to heaven and earth, the latter was akin to earth and 9 heavens. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Yuan or the Immortal, a figure was watching their fight from afar. So that's the newcomer, huh? Magnificent. He truly deserves to be a general with his capabilities, much less a member of the celestial overlords. Kellen smiled as he continued spectating their fight. However, to defeat that Immortal will require much more than that, Junior. A few moments later, the Immortal increased their cultivation by another level, entering Divine Master. The difference between Divine Warrior and Divine Master is greater than Spirit King and Divine Warrior. How will you deal with this now? Kellen mumbled as he prepared to save Yuan at any moment. Chapter 1566 Fighting the Escaped Immortal, 2. Chapter 1566 Fighting the Escaped Immortal, 2. 1566 Fighting the Escaped Immortal, 2. Divine Master, huh? Finally, some challenge. Yuan smiled upon seeing the Immortal's increased cultivation. That arrogance won't last long. The Immortal roared before they rushed at Yuan. Just the pressure from the Immortal's aura alone would kill an ordinary Spirit King. However, Yuan had the golden Immortal physique, as well as a sword body, so he barely felt it. Shrouded illusion. The mist around the Immortals suddenly began spreading, quickly covering 100 miles around them. While inside the mist, Yuan's divine sense and eyes were rendered useless. The only thing he could rely on was his divine gaze and instincts. Suddenly, as though a massive horde of monsters appeared, Yuan could hear loud noises approaching him from a distance. Soon, thousands of silhouettes appeared, crashing toward him like a wave. Each individual silhouette had a distinct aura and presence, making them feel incredibly real, almost indistinguishable from reality. Without hesitation, Yuan fiercely swung Dragon's Soul, instantly destroying the horde of silhouettes and scattering the mist like smoke. However, the mist quickly restored itself, and another illusion appeared shortly after. Moreover, the mist started transforming into a background until the mists were no longer visible, and Yuan quickly found himself in the middle of a bustling city. Chicken skewers here. Come get your chicken skewers. Free newspapers. Free newspapers. Mom, I am tired. Let's go home already. The pedestrians spoke and acted like real humans. The smell of chicken skewers reached Yuan's nose, and he could even feel the heat coming from the blazing sun in the sky. It was almost as if he had been teleported to an actual city. However, Yuan's expression remained nonchalant. This is quite a powerful illusion. I wouldn't blame anyone for falling to it, he thought. If one had weak mental strength, one would quickly lose oneself in the illusion and fail to distinguish fake from reality. Yuan closed his eyes and took a deep breath. A second later, when he opened them again, he could no longer see the people or the city, and the mist was visible once again. Moreover, several spiritual attacks were launched in his direction. Despite seeing the attacks and having plenty of time to avoid them, Yuan stood still and allowed the attacks to strike his body. The impact from the attacks was strong enough to blow the mist field away. Yet, Yuan remained still, and his body was only slightly injured. By the time the Immortal even realized Yuan had survived the attack, his injuries had already healed completely. Heavens! He took several Divine Master's attacks with his bare body and took virtually no damage. What is his body made of? Kellen's eyes widened with shock after witnessing this. Despite being a body refiner himself, Kellen could not imagine the extent to which Yuan had tempered his physique to be able to achieve such a ridiculous feat. Although the Immortal's face wasn't visible, Yuan could tell they were greatly shocked by his durability. Not only did Yuan casually shrug off their powerful illusion, but he even ate several of their spiritual attacks with his bare body and came out unscathed. The Immortal were beginning to wonder whether they could defeat Yuan without using their full strength. However, even if they managed to kill Yuan, they would have to deal with their pursuers afterward. Damn it all. Why did I have to encounter such a fucking monster in the fourth heaven? My luck is rotten to the core. The Immortal cried inwardly. They'd managed to escape from the 9 heavens eternal grotto to the 4th heaven without feeling half as cornered as they were currently, and it was all due to a single mortal. Fuck it. Let's just quickly kill him and hope my pursuers aren't so close that I won't be able to escape. The Immortal increased their cultivation once again, reaching all the way to the peak of Divine Grandmaster. The aura being emitted by the Immortal now was at least 4 times stronger than before. Sensing the tyrannical aura coming from the Immortal, Yuan knew that even his godly body would not be able to endure a single hit from the Immortal. The difference between Spirit Master and Spirit Grandmaster was simply too massive for him to ignore. I guess it's finally time to fight seriously. For the first time during their fight, Yuan equipped his equipment, from the Stygian vest to the Stygian boots. Indeed, Yuan had been empty-handed this entire time while fighting the Immortal. The moment Yuan equipped his equipment, his aura changed drastically. The Immortal frowned at this and, without hesitation, increased their cultivation once again, becoming a Divine Lord. The Stygian vest could deflect all attacks below Divine Lord, but that ability was rendered useless the moment the Immortal became a Divine Lord. However, Yuan was using it for its life-saving skill, so it was still useful. Yuan and the Immortal began their clash shortly after. The two of them moved at the speed of light, and every exchange would fill the surface of the purple sea with large craters. The immense spiritual energy emitted by their fight rippled far and wide, reaching even the Pavilion of Knowledge. After sensing the powerful ripples, Bai Ning and the others within the Pavilion of Knowledge stopped whatever they were doing and became alert. What powerful spiritual energy! 2 Divine Realm experts must be fighting each other nearby. I need to check this out. Bai Ning looked at Xian Wei and said, "I'll be back." Since she had nothing to do while waiting for Xian Kun, Bai Ning decided to entertain herself with this event. "Allow me to come with you just in case." Xian Wei hastily said. "Just in case what?" "You're not even qualified to protect me when you're so weak." Bai Ning sneered at his attempt to be a knight, as his cultivation was nowhere near hers. If anything, she would be the one protecting him. Xian Wei's face flushed with embarrassment after being reminded he was weaker than her. He lowered his head in silence, and Bai Ning left the place and made her way toward Yuan. Chapter 1567 Fighting the Escaped Immortal, 3. Chapter 1567 Fighting the Escaped Immortal, 3. 1567 Fighting the Escaped Immortal, 3. Yuan. She merely looked toward the direction of his battle with tightly clenched fists and a nervous face. She wanted to follow him so badly, but she knew she would only get in his way and convinced herself to stay in the room. Meanwhile, Yuan and the Immortal continued to attack each other as though their lives depended on it. White Lance. The Immortal created over 10,000 spears out of spiritual energy in the sky before launching all of them at Yuan. Seeing this, Yuan stopped moving and focused on blocking the attack. Using Dragon's Soul, he destroyed as many of them as he could and purposefully allowed some of them to hit his body. Even with his godly body and Stygian vest, the spears were powerful enough to penetrate holes into his body easily. Still, due to his regeneration ability, these holes would instantly recover, and in seconds, it was as though they never existed. The Stygian vest, as a treasure, also had a similar function. Unless struck by an attack strong enough to obliterate it completely in one hit, it would always recover. The Immortals slowly increased their cultivation from the first level of Divine Lord to the peak of Divine Lord. After an entire day of trying to kill Yuan with no results, the Immortal finally had enough and roared, "Oh! I've had enough of you. I don't know what trick you're using, but I will not let this go on any longer." He released all of his cultivation, causing it to shoot to the peak of Divine King instantly. The Immortal's aura was so tyrannical that Yuan felt like someone was strangling him by the neck. The difference between Spirit King and Divine King was simply too vast, even for someone like Yuan. Without hesitation, Yuan tossed most of his cards onto the field. After releasing a deafening roar, Yuan transformed into his dragon form. However, he didn't feel that was enough and equipped the celestial visage. A celestial-grade treasure. How in heaven's name did he acquire such a treasure in the fourth heaven? Kellen's entire being trembled after seeing Yuan pull out a treasure far beyond their current realm. However, what shocked him the most was Yuan's transformation. Is he actually half human and half beast? He wondered out loud. Just what the fuck are you? How many more bullshit are you going to pull out of your ass? The Immortal exclaimed after seeing Yuan's transformation. The Immortal was certain that Yuan was only at the Spirit King level, as he would have advanced his cultivation base long ago if he were higher. However, the fact that he hadn't meant that this was his true cultivation. Yet, this raised more questions. How could a Spirit King be on par with a Divine King? The difference between their cultivation was so vast that no treasure or technique could bridge the gap. At least, that's how it should have been. I am not done yet. Yuan suddenly said. A massive avatar appeared, its frame big enough to completely obstruct the Immortal's view of the Purple Sea. That's ridiculous. The Immortal cried out loud. That's the god of war's astral art. Did Celestial Overlord Su teach him that technique? Kellen cried out loud. Compared to his previous shocks, this revelation was the most profound, shaking him to his core. However, Yuan still had more cards to play. After putting away Dragon's Soul, he retrieved number 1 under heaven, instantly filling the atmosphere with an otherworldly aura. A third soul weapon. The Immortal was on the verge of tears. They could have never even dreamed of encountering such a monster in the fourth heaven. Hell, not even the supreme heaven had a monster like Yuan. Let's play to our heart's content. Yuan spoke with a wide grin on his face as he struck first. The first strike descended upon the unprepared Immortal like a falling mountain. However, as powerful as Yuan's attack appeared, he was still fighting a Divine King, and the Immortal was able to block it without too much difficulty. The second strike immediately followed. Don't you dare look down on me, mortal. No matter how many tricks you have up your sleeve, it won't help you defeat me. The Immortal roared as they blocked the second strike, then the third and fourth shortly after. The fifth and sixth strike was also blocked, but the Immortal struggled to do so. The seventh strike was so powerful that the Immortal barely managed to block it. Once the eighth strike descended, the Immortal didn't dare to block it and opted to avoid it. The eighth strike struck the Purple Sea, splitting it in half. What's wrong? Why are you running from Immortal? Yuan provoked the Immortal as he launched the 9th sword strike. The pressure from the 9th sword strike was nothing to scoff at. Even Kellen, who was watching from afar, felt threatened by it. Although enraged, the Immortal didn't succumb to Yuan's provocation. Instead, they employed a movement technique so swift that it appeared as if they had teleported. The 9th sword strike cleaved the purple sea with such force that it not only split the water in half but also gouged a profound fissure into the seabed. 2 powerful tsunamis were also created from the split water, reaching the clouds. Let's see if you can avoid this. Thousands of swords appeared in the sky before flying toward the Immortal, who frantically tried to avoid them. However, the swords chased after them like homing missiles. Each sword is overflowing with enhanced sword aura. What a terrifying ability. Kellen felt a strong urge to fight Yuan after witnessing how fierce their battle was. I have severely underestimated our newcomer. At this rate, he might actually be able to defeat this Immortal. Kellen almost couldn't believe his own words. The thought of a mortal killing an Immortal was so outrageous that even insane people wouldn't believe it. Yet, it was slowly happening before Kellen's eyes. Chapter 1568 The Escaped Immortal's True Appearance. Chapter 1568 The Escaped Immortal's True Appearance 1568 The Escaped Immortal's True Appearance. However, as much as Kellen wanted Yuan to defeat the Immortal, he still expected Yuan to lose the fight. Although you've been doing good so far, the Immortal still has one more trick up their sleeve. This trick is what differentiates and truly separates mortals and immortals. Kellen muttered after seeing how much Yuan was dominating the Immortal. This is outrageous. Why does such a mortal exist in a place like the Fourth Heaven? If only I weren't injured by the pursuers, I could have killed him in seconds instead of being ridiculed like this. The Immortal cursed inwardly. They had been chased non-stop since escaping the 9 Heavens' eternal grotto and were injured in the process. If it weren't for their injury, Yuan wouldn't have been able to push the Immortal so far. This mortal should not exist. His existence is extremely dangerous. Even if I have to sacrifice my life in the process, I will get rid of him. Several hours later, the Immortal's aura suddenly changed, causing their surroundings to freeze. From spiritual energy to the purple sea, everything was still, as though time itself had frozen. This pressure. Yuan halted his movements after sensing this familiar aura. He excitedly smiled and said, "It's about time you use immortal chi. I was wondering when you'd use it. I hate to admit this, but to force an immortal like me to use immortal chi on you, immortal, is an unprecedented feat that I must respect." As the Immortal spoke, the mist around them began dissipating, revealing their true appearance for the first time. Yuan's eyes widened with surprise when he saw the Immortal, who was much smaller than had anticipated. A child? Yuan muttered in a daze as his gaze stared at the little boy floating before him. The Immortal's true form was revealed to be that of a small boy, seemingly no older than 10 years. Of course, the Immortal wasn't a real child but merely bore the appearance of one. Adding to the strangeness, a short white tail protruded from his back. "As a show of respect, I shall fight you in my true form," said the Immortal. You're not human?" Yuan asked him with a strange frown. "Do I look human to you?" "I am of the proud Misty Fox race." The Immortal responded in a boastful tone. "Ha!" Yuan sighed with a genuinely disappointed look on his face. Had gone out of his way to fight this Immortal because he thought they were human. However, now that the Immortal is revealed to be a beast, it would no longer count toward his unique quest, even if he were to defeat the Immortal. The Immortal misunderstood Yuan's reason for disappointment and roared, "Are you looking down on me because of my appearance? This is why I refuse to show myself." Despite saying such words, the Immortal had to reveal himself mainly due to his injury. Concealing himself required a significant amount of energy, and he wouldn't be able to maintain it for much longer if he also had to use immortal chi on top of that in such a state. In the end, the Immortal decided to throw away his defenses to focus solely on his attack power. Yuan shook his head and said, "No, I am not looking down on you. I thought you were human, hence why I even bothered to fight you. Now that I know you're a beast, I don't really have a reason to continue fighting you. What kind of bullshit is that? You disturbed my recovery and forced me to reveal myself. We're going to fight to death even if you don't want to. The Immortal shouted. I never planned on backing out of our fight, anyway. Yuan smiled. There won't be any fight. I am going to massacre you now. The Immortal roared before activating a technique using Immortal Chi instead of normal Chi. Immortal White Lance. The same technique from before was now multiple times stronger, and since they were created from Immortal Chi, Yuan would not be able to destroy them even using Dragon's Soul. Furthermore, the Immortal Chi being exuded by the Immortal made it much more difficult for Yuan to move, and his entire body was screaming from pain. In fact, his muscles were being torn apart every passing second. He was essentially a sitting duck at this moment in time. Seeing this, Kellen prepared to save Yuan. However, despite his seeming perilous situation, Yuan did not panic. Die, you monster. The Immortal gestured, causing hundreds of immortal white lances to rain upon Yuan. Yet, Yuan refused to move, much less dodge the incoming attack. Has he given up on living? Fool. Not daring to wait until it was too late, Kellen made his move, disappearing from his spot. A split second later, Kellen appeared in front of Yuan, who was slightly surprised by this sudden intruder. However, before Yuan could speak or take any action, Kellen released an overwhelming aura that far surpassed the Immortal and destroyed all of the Immortal's attacks with a mere flick of his arm, treating them like they were mere candle flickers. The Immortal's entire body trembled in fear when he sensed Kellen's profound presence. Unlike the Immortal, who had traversed to the fourth heaven illegally, Kellen received approval, so his cultivation wasn't as suppressed as the Immortal. However, the Immortal was sure he would not be this newcomer's opponent even if they had similar cultivation. Ignoring the Immortal, Kellen turned to look at Yuan with a proud demeanor around him. Why did you give up at such a crucial moment, Junior? Even if you are certain of your death, as a man, you should fight until your last breath. Who knows? Maybe a miracle could have happened. Kellen expected Yuan to thank him for saving his life. Yet, Yuan had a frown on his face. He removed the celestial visage so Kellen could see his frown and said coldly, Who said I gave up? And who the hell are you? Who permitted you to interrupt our fight? Huh? Kellen muttered in a surprised tone, his expression puzzled. Chapter 1569 Distraction. Chapter 1569 Distraction 1569 Distraction. Kellen was rendered speechless by Yuan's response, and after a moment of silence, he spoke, Junior, it's good to be confident in yourself, but you were clearly on the brink of death. If I hadn't saved you just now, you'd have become a human skewer. Also, if you hadn't given up, why were you frozen just now? Any onlooker would have assumed you were giving up in that situation. Kellen said. Yuan shook his head and sighed, while I appreciate your thoughtfulness, it was unnecessary and undermined my existence. Leave. I don't need your assistance. You. Kellen's expression quickly turned angry. He couldn't believe he was being lectured by the very person he had just saved. Is that so? Then you can go ahead and die here, you stubborn and arrogant little bastard. Kellen left the scene the very next moment. However, Kellen didn't wholly leave and only pretended to do so. Even if Yuan refused his goodwill and shooed him away, he still had a duty to protect Yuan, and it was not only his promise to Elder Bai that compelled him to do so. Yuan's talent was simply shocking and unlike anything he'd seen before, and that fact alone was worth his protection. Regardless of his character, he's a profound existence that will significantly benefit our celestial overlord in the future. However, he'll need to survive until then, and with his suicidal nature, it's not going to be easy keeping him alive. Kellen sighed inwardly, feeling like an older brother trying to keep his younger siblings out of trouble even though he was hated by them. Meanwhile, the Immortal was left speechless by what had just transpired. Who the hell was that bastard just now? I don't recognize him, and since he left without doing anything to me, it's safe to assume that he's not with the pursuers. The Immortal swallowed nervously. If Kellen had been with his pursuers, he would have never made it to the fourth heaven alive. That was just how vast the difference in their strength was. Immortals are prideful creatures, so for one to acknowledge their inferiority held great significance. I apologize for that. Yuan suddenly said. What? The immortal stared at him with wide eyes. That man's interruption. Although it was never my intention, he disturbed our battle. Go ahead and use that technique again. I can even wait for you to recover some of your energy. Yuan explained. Not just the immortal, but even Kellen was utterly speechless. After a moment of silence, the immortal began trembling, his face flushed red, turning into a tomato. Stop mocking me, you bastard. Do I really appear that pathetic to you? With an enraged bellow, his aura skyrocketed. Meanwhile, several individuals far away from the Purple Sea sensed the distinct aura of the immortal's chi. It's the escapee. Why are they releasing so much immortal chi? Are they engaged in battle with another immortal? It must be the others. But why didn't they notify me? They know that Immortal isn't someone they can handle alone. The Immortals chasing after the escaped Immortal were puzzled when they were not notified, and when they contacted the others, they were shocked to learn that none of them were actually fighting the escaped Immortal. What? None of you are fighting the escapee? Then what's with this immense immortal chi? They wouldn't release so much immortal chi for no reason. Maybe the escapee is trying to lure us into a trap. Do you seriously believe that? Whatever the escapee is attempting, we need to capture or kill them. Let's hurry up before they escape our grasp again. These immortals immediately started soaring toward the Purple Sea. At the same time, Bai Ning was just minutes away from reaching her destination. Unlike Kellen, Yuan could sense her approaching presence from miles away. Not wanting to expose his identity so quickly, he wore the celestial visage again, hiding his face. Just as Bai Ning arrived, the immortal activated his technique again. Immortal White Lance. Thousands of white lances filled the sky, each exuding profound immortal chi. Bai Ning was shocked by the scene, but when she noticed the masked man in the middle of the battlefield, her eyes fixed on him, and she was unable to look away. It's him! She exclaimed in a bewildered voice. Although he was wearing a different mask, she recognized him as the individual who bullied Bai Shutao and used that weird technique on her. Bai Ning wanted to approach Yuan, but he was in a position where she could not enter, as she risked getting blown away with him by the immortal. Die for me, you human mortal. The immortal released his technique. Kellen gritted his teeth as he watched Yuan being bombarded with immortal chi. He wanted to believe in Yuan, but his instincts acted before he could even think. However, he was immediately halted by an unfathomable presence that surpassed even Senior Bai. Who's there? Kellen frantically looked around but couldn't sense anyone. To avoid my detection, they must be a God Ascension Realm expert. What the hell is going on right now? He cried inwardly. Oh no. Junior. The distraction rendered Kellen unable to save Yuan, his mind already racing to formulate excuses for when he would have to report Yuan's death to Senior Bai. Yet, Kellen's face filled with disbelief as he witnessed the unfolding events. What he saw defied all expectations and left him momentarily paralyzed in astonishment. The Immortal's attacks landed with unerring precision, each strike tearing holes through Yuan's body. Yet, to the Immortal's astonishment, the grievous injuries Yuan sustained healed instantly, akin to a demon's heaven-defying regenerative abilities. It was as if the very laws of nature bent to keep Yuan whole. Progress, 15%, progress, 17%, progress, 20%, the merging of his physiques, which had been progressing at a snail's pace, began to advance rapidly under the immense stress Yuan's body was enduring. Just what the fuck are you? The Immortal shrieked out loud, his face twisted in anger, but his eyes showed a hint of fear. Chapter 1570 Progress. Chapter 1570 Progress. Why won't you just die? Die already, you fucking monster. The Immortal relentlessly assaulted Yuan with immortal chi, but regardless of the countless wounds inflicted, Yuan would miraculously heal all injuries within half a second. Progress, 22%, progress, 25%, progress, 30%. Not only was Yuan's physique rapidly merging, but his comprehension of immortal chi was also deepening merely by being immersed in it. Yuan even closed his eyes and started cultivating. This bewildered everyone watching. What the hell is he? This is beyond the realm of talents and what humans can achieve. Kellen swallowed nervously at the ridiculous scene before him. And his regenerating ability rivals that of a demon. Don't tell me he has demonic blood flowing through his veins? The possibility that Yuan might be a demon filled Kellen with wariness and profound anxiety, knowing the immense implications it would have. Meanwhile, Bai Ning had her jaw tightly clenched, her expression more irritated than shocked. He can fight someone over 8 realms above his own strength. Bai Ning was irritated that Yuan, the very person who had humiliated the Heavenly White Tiger clan by defeating Bai Shudao, possessed far more talent than she did. Despite being a prodigy capable of battling opponents nearly 2 entire realms above her own cultivation and being hailed as one of the top prodigies of their era, she was akin to an ordinary individual before Yuan's talents. However, even with their differences, Bai Ning wanted to fight Yuan, and that feeling was boosted by her competitive nature. Progress, 85%, progress, 88%, progress, 93%. As the Immortal increased the intensity of his attacks, Yuan's merging progress advanced even faster. You will fall here even if it's the last thing I do. The Immortal bellowed as he exerted his maximum strength. The pressure from his aura was so intense that it seemingly filled the entire Purple Sea, causing the surrounding islands to tremble violently. The Immortal was exerting so much strength that he somehow broke through some of heaven's restrictions on his cultivation, causing his cultivation to enter Divine Emperor. The Immortal's aura pierced the heavens. Immortal mist gathering. The Immortal roared, creating a massive lance in the sky that rivaled the size of Yuan's God of War's astral arts. Let's see if you can regenerate from a completely obliterated body. The Immortal laughed maniacally before launching the massive lance at Yuan. Do you need my help? Zi Xian's voice suddenly resounded. No, it'll be fine. Is that so? Then I'll go back to sleep. Zi Xian calmly said. The massive lance arrived in front of Yuan the following moment. Ha! Yuan released a powerful roar as he brought forth every ounce of power within his body. For the first time in a long time, Yuan was going beyond his limit. A faint but noticeable amount of immortal chi exuded from Yuan's body. Immortal chi? Impossible. Kellen cried out loud. No, it's weak and incomplete, but it's undeniably immortal chi. That arrogant bastard is already able to comprehend immortal chi. He's not even in the divine realm, much less the immortal realm. Most people start comprehending immortal chi at immortal ascension realm, and only when they fully comprehend immortal chi would one be able to enter the immortal realm as a bronze immortal. However, Yuan, who was still immortal with a spirit king cultivation, was already showing signs of comprehending immortal chi. If the world knew such a genius existed, many powerhouses would try to recruit him or outright erase him if he rejected them. In the next moment, the lance struck Yuan's body. Yet, instead of piercing through him as usual, it froze in place, as if suspended in time, barely penetrating the surface like a needle hanging by a thread. What? The Immortal was shocked by what he was witnessing. Despite Yuan's immortal chi being incomplete, it was still powerful enough to barely hold back the Immortal's chi. Progress, 97%, progress, 98%, progress, 99%, die already. The Immortal bellowed as he detonated the lance, causing a massive explosion that shook the fourth heaven. Profound immortal chi erupted like a shockwave, generating tsunamis that surged in every direction. Junior. Kellen's heart skipped a beat. Damn it. I was too absorbed in their fight and failed to protect the newcomer. The Celestial Overlord and Senior Bai will skin me alive once they find out. Kellen cried inwardly, feeling a strong urge to bury himself in a hole and never emerge. Fuck. Don't tell me he died just like that. I never even got the chance to have a rematch with him. Bai Ning gritted her teeth in frustration. Ha ha ha. I did it. I finally killed that fucking cockroach. The Immortal laughed out loud. At the same time, several more individuals appeared at the scene. They were the Immortal's pursuers, and they arrived shocked, as they'd witnessed the moments before Yuan was caught up in the explosion. Meanwhile, after enduring the Immortal's explosion head-on, Yuan's body was obliterated, leaving behind only a few scattered cells. Yet, he did not receive the death notification. Progress, 100%, Yuan's obliterated body immediately began to repair itself. As his form regenerated fully, his dantian also underwent a profound transformation. The invisible wall that had been blocking his cultivation advancement past Spirit King was finally lifted, and Yuan could feel his cultivation inching toward the next realm. I am possible. The Immortal muttered in a dazed voice, his expression filled with despair. And not human, he cannot be human with that kind of regenerating ability. Don't tell me he's a demon. The pursuers quickly came to this conclusion. I'll be damned. Kellen's entire body trembled in excitement. Bai Ning remained silent, but her bewildered expression spoke clearer than any words could. Chapter 1571 Heaven Refining Immortal Physique. Chapter 1571 Heaven Refining Immortal Physique. Yuan inspected his body after acquiring the Heaven Refining Immortal Physique. His body was incomparably stronger than before, whether in strength or durability. If his body couldn't handle the Immortal's attacks previously, his current body would have no problem shrugging them off. The difference was akin to comparing dried mud to steel. There were also several other changes that occurred within his body, but he had no idea what they could be for the time being. Don't move, you demon. A loud voice with a hint of terror suddenly resounded, snapping Yuan out of his daze. He shifted his head to look at the person who'd just spoken, one of the pursuers. What did you just call me? Yuan raised an eyebrow. There's no use hiding it. That ridiculous regenerating ability is unique to demons. Yuan was speechless, but he didn't blame this individual for mistaking him for a demon. After all, he would have probably done the same if he were in that man's shoes, as his regenerating ability was acquired through demon cores, so the pursuers weren't wrong. I understand your confusion, but rest assured, I am not a demon. Yuan calmly said. Shut up. Do you think I'm stupid or something? The pursuers outright ignored the Immortal, whom they had been chasing for months, to focus on Yuan, who was a much bigger threat to the Nine Heavens than the escapee. I don't think you're stupid, for now. If I were a demon, would have horns and a crystal, wouldn't I? Yuan exposed his torso so show that he had no demon crystal on his body. You're definitely taking me for a fool. High-ranking demons don't have horns and crystals. They look no different than humans. So you're suggesting that I am a demon emperor who looks no different than humans? How could a demon emperor be a mere spirit king? And why would I bother to risk exposing myself to fight that Immortal? Yuan asked. The pursuer couldn't find a logical explanation immediately and momentarily became speechless. You're obviously hiding your cultivation. There's no way a spirit king could emit immortal chi. I don't know why you're fighting with the escapee, but that doesn't prove you're not a demon. One of the pursuers exclaimed. That's right. You're a demon hiding in human skin. Another joined. Seeing how the group of immortals prepared to kill him, Yuan sighed. You guys must be quite weak if it requires 4 of you to chase after a single escapee. Come, they'll play with you. The group of immortals immediately exploded with anger after being provoked by Yuan. If we can't capture him, kill him. Kill me? Even though I'm a demon? You should probably get the demon sealing clan instead. Yuan laughed out loud. The immortals' faces flushed red before surrounding him in a formation. Golden Lotus Prison. The 4 of them worked together to quickly create a powerful formation around Yuan. Although they were only Tier 5 array masters, they were able to create a Tier 6 formation in the blink of an eye together. Yuan suddenly found himself entrapped inside a golden lotus that slowly drained his spiritual energy. When Kellen saw this, he thought about intervening, but he wanted to see how Yuan would deal with this situation first. As long as Yuan's life wasn't in danger, he decided to remain as a spectator. However, with Yuan's regenerating ability rivaling demons, Kellan was no longer worried that he might die. The Immortals, aware that their chances of killing Yuan were slim despite the disparity in their cultivation, resorted to using a formation specifically designed to capture entities as resilient as Yuan. "Do you want me to destroy the formation for you?" Yu Ning, who had been silently watching this entire time, suddenly spoke. "No, it's fine. I want to test out my new physique." "Okay." Yuan suddenly closed his eyes and took a deep breath. The very next moment, the prison around Yuan suddenly began breaking down, almost as if it were slowly being devoured by an invisible force. What the fuck? The formation's losing energy. That's impossible. That demon bastard is absorbing the formation's immortal chi. What? How is he doing that? Techniques are sealed within the Golden Lotus formation. It must be one of his demon abilities. Hey. Escapee. Help us kill this demon, and we'll give you freedom. One of the Immortals turned to look at the escapee. Are you serious? Even if I want to kill him, you saw for yourself that I am unable to do so. The Misty Fox said. That's only if you're fighting alone. If the 5 of us work together, there's still a chance. The Misty Fox couldn't reject the possibility of freedom and agreed to help the Immortals. The more the merrier. Yuan smiled. After consuming immortal chi directly, Yuan's understanding of immortal chi skyrocketed, causing the immortal chi he exuded to become more apparent and profound. This is the perfect opportunity for me to understand immortal chi. Yuan found a reason to fight these Immortals. The 5 Immortals, each restricted to the Divine King, began bombarding Yuan with techniques infused with immortal chi. To Yuan, enduring these hits with his bare body felt like being struck with a sledgehammer. However, unlike before, it wasn't enough to destroy his body and merely bruise it. Moreover, whenever their attack struck Yuan, his heaven-refining immortal physique would automatically absorb some of the immortal chi, weakening the force of their blows and strengthening his body even further. Suddenly, Yuan's aura surged, and his dantian expanded. Amid the battle, Yuan had a breakthrough and finally escaped Spirit King, becoming a Spirit Emperor. Chapter 1572 Spirit Emperor. Chapter 1572 Spirit Emperor. The moment Yuan's cultivation entered Spirit Emperor, his aura surged so much that the Immortals thought had skipped several levels in his breakthrough. This bastard had a breakthrough in the middle of a battle. What a fucking monster. Wait, does that mean he was actually only a Spirit King? The realization that Yuan, merely a Spirit King, possessed the prowess to fight them struck quickly. Their faces filled with terror as the full implications of his power dawned on them. We cannot let him live, or hell become an immense threat to humanity later. Kill him. Use everything you've got. The Immortals frantically attacked Yuan, viewing him as a looming calamity destined to destroy humanity in the future. Meanwhile, seeing Yuan breakthrough snapped Bai Ning out of her daze, and she suddenly approached the battlefield. Stop, she shouted, her voice filled with commanding authority. Who the hell are you? Are you this demon's accomplice? The Immortals immediately became even more nervous. If Bai Ning turned out to be another demon, they'd have no chance of killing them. However, Bai Ning retrieved a white and black medallion before throwing it at one of the Immortals. That is my identity. This is, the Heavenly White Tiger Clan's medallion? And this name, you must be the Heavenly White Tiger Goddess. Are you here to help us subjugate this demon? Thank the heavens. However, Bai Ning shook her head and said, No, but I want to fight him, so get out of my way. What? I understand that you want to fight him, but why must you do it alone? He's a dangerous entity, a demon that terrorized our world and all living beings within. Do I really have to explain myself to you? Bai Ning narrowed her eyes at them. The Immortals exchanged nervous glances with each other. Bai Ning's status was simply too exalted for them to ignore, but it was not as though they could let her fight the demon alone. If she died, they would be held responsible, hence their perplexed situation. Seemingly aware of their predicament, Bai Ning said, "Don't worry, even if I die, you won't be responsible." Bai Ning no longer paid attention to the immortals and approached Yuan, who hovered there calmly. Without an ounce of fear in her eyes, Bai Ning spoke, "Yo. Do you remember me?" Yuan nodded. "You're the one who interrupted my fight with Bai Shutao." "You call that a fight? You were straight bullying my brother." "Do you know why I did what I did?" Yuan then asked. "No, and I don't care. The only thing that matters to me is you attacked someone from my family. So you won't care even if he slaughters an entire city of innocent people?" Yuan asked, his voice carrying a hint of coldness. After a moment of silence, Bai Ning responded, "He will atone for whatever crime had committed, just like how you'll be punished for attacking a member of the Heavenly White Tiger clan." "Is that so? What if the Immortal Monarch were in my shoes? What would you do then?" Bai Ning was taken aback by his sudden mention of the Immortal Monarch. "How dare you utter his sacred name with your dirty mouth? The Immortal Monarch would never be in your shoes in the first place." "Really? The world's a big and mysterious place. What if I turn out to be the real Immortal Monarch?" Yuan teased. "Blasphemy." Bai Ning bellowed before suddenly transforming, her aura skyrocketing. "I couldn't kill you in the third heaven because of my restricted cultivation, but it's a different story up here. Let's see if you can repeat what you did last time." Bai Ning's aura surged all the way to the peak of Divine King, surpassing the other immortals' aura. "This lad is not bad." Kellen nodded in approval after sensing Bai Ning's powerful aura. "No matter how high your cultivation is, you'll never be able to defeat me." Yuan casually shook his head. "Shut up and fight me," Bai Ning shouted as she started her assault. Yuan didn't move to purposefully test the strength of her first strike. Shah! Bai Ning used her bare hands, her claws, to strike. Imbued with powerful immortal chi, her claws were strong enough to cut through Yuan's body. However, the damage was only superficial, and it didn't take more than a second for it to recover fully. "Not bad, I suppose," Yuan calmly commented. "Shut up and fight me seriously," Bai Ning shouted. "Are you actually using Bai Shutao as an excuse to fight me? All you need to do is ask nicely, you know." Bai Ning responded with another powerful strike, its pressure powerful enough to cleave the purple sea. 5 red lines resembling sword cuts spread across Yuan's chest but disappeared in the blink of an eye. Despite Bai Ning's relentless attack, Yuan remained still, seemingly unwilling to fight her. "Fight me, damn it!" she roared, her aura surging even higher. "Not until you admit that you don't care about the punishment and are only using it as an excuse to fight me." Yuan casually shrugged. "Fuck you." Bai Ning continued launching powerful strikes at Yuan. Several moments later, her most potent attack managed to slice his body in half, but it was pointless and just a waste of immortal chi if she couldn't kill him. "I'm waiting." Yuan yawned, positioning himself as if he were lazily lying on a couch before a television. Yuan's unwillingness to fight and his blatant mockery infuriated Bai Ning. "Fuck. Fuck. Fuck." Bai Ning stopped fighting for a moment and cursed out loud. "I don't care about Bai Shutao or the punishment for attacking a member of our Heavenly White Tiger clan. I just want to fight you," she exclaimed with her face flushed red. "That's more like it. Don't you feel better just from being honest with yourself?" Yuan chuckled. "Fuck you. If you still refuse to fight me properly, it'll make you regret being born," she roared. "I am a man of my word." With number 1 under heaven in his grasp, Yuan suddenly charged at Bai Ning. Seeing this, Bai Ning prepared to confront him with a wide grin on her face. Chapter 1573 Beyond Human Capabilities. Chapter 1573 Beyond Human Capabilities. When Yuan swung number 1 under heaven at her, Bai Ning prepared to confront it with her claws, which were sharper and more durable than even mythic-grade treasures. However, moments before they clashed, her instincts kicked in, causing her to avoid the sword instead. Shaw! A powerful sword light swung past Bai Ning's claw and struck the purple sea behind her, splitting it in half. Although the sword light didn't touch her, its aura grazed her hand, and that was enough to cut through her skin. Bai Ning swallowed nervously at this and cried inwardly, if I hadn't avoided his sword at the very last moment, my entire hand would have been cut off. I have never seen such a powerful soul weapon before. Seeing Bai Ning's nervous expression, Yuan looked at number 1 under heaven and showed a bittersweet smile. You're too powerful. After pondering for a moment, he put away the sword and retrieved Dragon's soul again. What is the meaning of this? Are you looking down on me? Bai Ning's brows deeply furrowed. I mean, it's not like I am trying to kill you. Yuan calmly said. Do you really think you have what it takes to kill me? You're thinking too highly of yourself just because you managed to fight with a few ordinary immortals. Today, I, Bai Ning, shall teach you what a prodigy is like. Bai Ning roared before charging at Yuan, releasing a relentless assault on him. Yuan parried all her attacks, but the impact from her strikes was far stronger than those of all the immortals combined, enough to push him back. So it wasn't just his sword that contributed to his prowess. This bastard must have a unique physique that rivals demons. Bai Ning gritted her teeth as she used all her power, which she rarely did. Hours passed, but Bai Ning couldn't see any opportunity to defeat Yuan. He was akin to an unsurmountable wall, one that could regenerate any damage in the blink of an eye. Is he really a demon? Bai Ning began doubting whether he was actually a demon. Although she had never fought or seen a demon before, she had heard plenty of rumors about them, especially how they terrorized the world with their godlike healing abilities, the same one Yuan was displaying at this moment. Are you really a demon? Bai Ning asked without stopping the fight. What do you think? Yuan casually responded. I think your healing abilities are ridiculous. Thanks. I am not complimenting you. It's so ridiculous that it's not helping your case. Yuan chuckled and said, people will believe what they want to believe regardless of the facts, even if it's right in their eyes. There's no need to try to convince these people, as I would only be wasting my breath. You will regret this in the future. Are you worried about me? If so, thanks. Yuan chuckled. Shut up. Several more hours later, Bai Ning ran out of spiritual energy. Usually, she'd be able to fight for months, if not years, without exhausting her spiritual energy, but she had to use a tremendous amount of spiritual energy just to hurt Yuan. Meanwhile, Yuan was still full of energy from absorbing her attacks, transforming it into his own energy. How are you still so full of energy? Bai Ning was in disbelief. I just am. Anyway, it's been fun, but I have other things to do. Where do you think you're going? One of the immortals shouted at him. Yuan fell silent and glanced at him through his mask. After a moment of silence, Yuan suddenly withdrew number 1 under heaven and charged at the immortal with his movement technique. Immortal rendering sword strike. The immortal was caught off guard by Yuan's surprise attack and failed to react in time before being sliced in half. However, the immortal didn't die and managed to survive with just his soul. Yet, Yuan swung his sword again, using nothing but his enhanced sword aura. No! The immortal cried out loud, his voice filled with fear. Unfortunately, Yuan didn't spare another thought before cutting down his soul, killing him entirely. Ding! Beyond human capabilities, when fighting a cultivator, your base stats will be boosted by 100%. Defeat a cultivator who is at least 9 realms above you without using Heaven's supremacy. Completed. With 2 of the most challenging tasks completed, Yuan felt like he was making progress for Heaven's supremacy. What the fuck have you done? Kellen was greatly shocked by Yuan's actions. In fact, nobody there expected Yuan to suddenly kill one of the immortals there. You son of a bitch. The other immortals quickly reacted to the death of their companion, their faces flushed with anger. Yet, none of them dared to attack Yuan. You will regret this, you damn demon. Instead of fighting him, the immortals turned around and ran away. As for the Misty Fox, he also ran away. Kellen appeared shortly after with a deep frown on his face. Why did you do that? He asked. Yuan looked at him and calmly responded, why not? That man you killed belonged to the Nine Heavens Law and Order. Not only do they oversee the Nine Heavens Eternal Grotto, but they're also responsible for keeping order in the Nine Heavens. Their influence is second to the Celestial Emperor. And you just killed one of them. Is that so? I got unlucky, I guess. Kellen suddenly turned to look at Bai Ning and said, can you please leave us alone? And who the hell are you to command me? Bai Ning frowned. Kellen's body suddenly released an oppressive aura that filled the entire Purple Sea. Please leave, while I am still asking nicely. Bai Ning narrowed her eyes at him. After a moment of silence, she turned to look at Yuan and spoke, this isn't over. I'll defeat you the next time we meet. Bai Ning left the scene shortly after, leaving Yuan and Kellen alone in the middle of the Purple Sea. Chapter 1574 Nine Heavens Law and Order. Chapter 1574 Nine Heavens Law and Order. Once they were finally alone, Kellen raised his hand and showed his faction symbol, as long as his rank. Yuan's curiosity was piqued at the sight of Kellen's symbol and rank. He raised an eyebrow and inquired, what brings a high-ranking figure like you to the fourth heaven? I doubt it's a simple task like catching an escaped immortal. Yuan pretended not to be part of the Celestial Overlord to see Kellen's reaction. There's no need to be on alert. My name is Kellen, and Senior Bai asked me to watch over you because he was worried that your fight with the Immortal might go awry. Oh, is that so? I apologize if I had offended you in any way before, Senior. Yuan's attitude suddenly changed, becoming more respectable. This dumbfounded Kellen. The way he treats his friends and foes are so vastly different. Even if I am someone slightly suspicious, he might not hesitate to cut me down. Kellen thought to himself. Anyway, even though nothing happened to you, and you even managed to slay an immortal, albeit the wrong one, I must apologize for failing to save your life multiple times due to how absorbed I was in your fight. Your fight was truly mesmerizing and awe-inspiring. Unfortunately, you ended up killing someone you shouldn't have, and you even made it seem like you're a demon, or are you actually one? Kellen inquired, seemingly unclear on his identity. Yuan smiled and said, don't worry, I am definitely human. Kellen sighed in relief and said, thank the heavens. You would have made things really difficult for us if you were a demon. With that said, you'll probably still be hunted by the Nine Heavens Law and Order for killing their member, and rumors about you being a demon will spread. Your healing abilities that rival a demon will concern many people, and they might treat you like a real demon, even if you're a human. However, the Celestial Overlords will do everything they can to protect you. However, Yuan shook his head and said, don't worry, I never intended to cause trouble for the Celestial Overlords. Even if they want to find me, they don't know my real identity yet, so they'll be chasing a phantom for a while. You're unfathomably bold. Nobody could be as calm as you if they knew they were being hunted by the Nine Heavens Law and Order. Yuan shrugged and said, anyway, since I am safe, does that mean you'll return to the upper heavens now? No, I'll stick around a little longer. After all, it's been so long since I visited the lower heavens. I also want to know more about you, Junior. And once you recover from your fight, let's have a spar. Yuan nodded, all right. Then I'll see you later. Kellen left the scene shortly after, returning to Senior Bai to notify him of their situation. Yuan returned to the Pavilion of Knowledge. Yuan. You're okay. Shimei's face immediately brightened after seeing his return. I told you I'd be fine. Yuan smiled. How was it? Did you kill the immortal? She asked. No, he got away, but I did kill an immortal. What? Shimei raised her eyebrows in a puzzled manner. It's a bit complicated, but this is what happened. Yuan recalled the events that had occurred during his battle. Heavens, what a mess. Mei's eyes were wide open by the end. Meanwhile, Kellen requested an urgent audience with Senior Bai. When Senior Bai received this urgent request, his eyebrows rose. Sometime later, he met up with Kellen, who was waiting for him inside his world. Senior. Kellen respectfully bowed to him. What's the matter? To request an urgent audience, did something happen to Yuan? Senior Bai went straight to the point. Kellen nodded with a serious expression and said, a lot happened, so sit back and prepare yourself. Senior Bai immediately swallowed nervously. I watched our junior fight the escaped immortal. It was quite something. He exceeded my expectations in every metric and more. This is how it went. While Kellen recalled everything he had witnessed to Senior Bai, the same thing was happening elsewhere with the group of immortals that had confronted Yuan. It's a demon, I tell you. We must contact the Demon Sealing Clan and the Demon Sealing Grotto as soon as possible. This demon was unlike anything I've seen or heard. He wielded a sword and spear and had the aura of a beast. He was only a spirit king, but he could use enhanced sword aura and fight several divine kings simultaneously. The leader of 9 Heavens Law and Order listened to the information with a confused and bewildered look on his face. A spirit king that can fight an immortal with their cultivation suppressed to divine king? Has demon-like regenerating ability? What kind of fucking creature are you guys making up? Did you guys get hit in the head too hard when trying to capture the escapee? The leader couldn't believe what he was hearing. This entity sounded like something that wouldn't exist even in exaggerated fiction. This monster is real. The immortals insisted. The leader sighed, all right, I'll contact the Demon Sealing Clan and the Demon Sealing Grotto. Tell me everything that happened. A few hours later, the leader of 9 Heavens Law and Order visited the Demon Sealing Faction's headquarters and requested an audience with Qian Chu, the current leader of the Demon Sealing Faction. It's been a while, Demon Sealer Qian. Qian Chu casually nodded and said, I was told you have information on a powerful demon? Unfortunately. My faction members encountered this demon in the 4th heaven while chasing after one of the 9 Heavens Eternal Grotto escapees. With that said, I am not certain this information is trustworthy. You'll understand what I mean in a bit. A demon in the 4th heaven? This would be troublesome if true. Qian Chu muttered. All right, let's hear it. Tell me everything you know about this demon. Chapter 1575 Unknown Demon. Chapter 1575 Unknown Demon. The leader of 9 Heavens Law and Order began recalling what his subordinates told him with a somewhat stiff expression, almost as if he couldn't believe what he was uttering. This demon was only a spirit king when they initially encountered it but had a breakthrough toward the end, reaching Spirit Emperor. However, even before reaching Spirit Emperor, this demon could fight with the escapee, who was restricted to the Divine King realm, even overpower them to a certain extent. Once this demon reached Spirit Emperor, it was able to fight 5 divine kings simultaneously, even killing one of our members. This demon wielded 2 different weapons, a sword and a spear, being exceptionally proficient with the sword, to the point where he could use enhanced sword aura. Moreover, both of these weapons were soul weapons. This demon's regenerating ability is also no joke, being able to recover within seconds after having their entire body annihilated. Not only did they have a ridiculously fast regenerating speed, their body was also incredibly durable. This demon wore a mask, but it had no visible horns or unique skin color, a common trait amongst demons. Furthermore, it had the aura of a beast. Qian Chu listened to the information of this potential demon with raised eyebrows. Head studied and encountered more than anyone within the Demon Sealing Clan, yet Head never encountered a demon that could wield soul weapons, much less 2. While demons are naturally powerful and could fight humans with higher cultivation than itself, not even a demon emperor could fight someone 8 realms stronger, let alone 5 at once. The most ridiculous claim about this demon was that it could use enhanced sword aura. Demons specialized in blood techniques and their own bodies, and there had never been a record of a demon using sword aura, much less enhanced sword aura. If Qian Chu had to be honest, he would outright refute these claims. However, There was no reason for the Nine Heavens Law and Order to fabricate such information, especially since their leader had personally shown up to share it. The details were simply too elaborate to be a joke. So, what do you think? Ridiculous, right? The Nine Heavens Law and Order leader said with an embarrassed face. However, I have verified the information myself. My members have no reason to lie about this, and they looked genuinely shaken by their encounter with this demon. Qian Chu quickly replied, would be lying if I said that I don't doubt such information, but if a demon with this sort of capabilities were to truly exist, our world would definitely be plunged into another chaotic era, perhaps one that's even more chaotic than the last one. The Nine Heavens Law and Order leader swallowed nervously after hearing such words, and he said, regardless of if this entity is a demon or a ghost, we must find it and ensure that such a thing won't happen. Qian Chu nodded and said, I will have all of my Supreme Demon Sealers and Master Demon Sealers look into this demon. Thank you. I will also contact the Demon Sealing Grotto so we can work together. The sooner we deal with this threat, the better. Although the leader knew these two powers rarely collaborated and, more often than not, clashed with each other, they were not in a position to be picky. If this demon turned out to be the real deal, they might have another war with demons. Qian Chu didn't object to the leader's idea to involve the Demon Sealing Grotto, knowing they would inevitably learn of the situation and intervene, regardless of the Demon Sealing clan's stance. The Nine Heavens Law and Order leader didn't linger and immediately went to the Demon Sealing Grotto. Qian Chu also summoned all of the Supreme Demon Sealers and Master Demon Sealers to an urgent meeting, something that has not happened since he became the leader of the Demon Sealing clan. The Demon Sealers were taken aback by the sudden summoning. Filled with a mix of anticipation and a touch of dread, they swiftly assembled at the headquarters. At the meeting, Qian Chu revealed the situation to the Demon Sealers, who responded with skepticism rather than shock or fear. I know what you're all thinking, but the leader of the Nine Heavens Law and Order personally delivered this information to me. Regardless if this entity is a demon or something else, it raises too many concerns and must be looked into. Do we have a description of this demon? Someone asked. Qian Chu retrieved a large scroll and revealed a painting of Yuan on it. This was created by those who encountered the demon. It has all of the details they could recall. Study it and memorize it. While the Demon Sealing clan was having their meeting, the Demon Sealing Grotto was also preparing to hunt this demon. After hearing how ridiculously capable this demon was, they decided to make hunting it their #1 priority. Over the next few days, hundreds of powerful Demon Sealers would be sent to the fourth heaven. Meanwhile, Senior Bai had trouble standing once Kellen recalled everything to him. Dear heavens, are you sure you weren't hallucinating? Yuan only became a cultivator a few years ago. How in heaven's name is he already fighting immortals? Even if their cultivation was suppressed, their experience should have made an insurmountable difference. Or are you telling me that Head managed to acquire what others need tens of thousands of years to learn in just several years? Do such terrifying talents truly exist in this world? Trust me, I know how you feel, and I witnessed it firsthand. He's the real deal, a real monster. Kellen sighed. He continued, what should we do now? Although the Nine Heavens Law and Order aren't aware of his identity now, they eventually will. Senior Bai pondered for many minutes with a serious expression on his face before speaking. He'll seek guidance from the Celestial Overlord. Don't utter a word of this to anyone else before I return. Naturally. Kellen nodded. Chapter 1576 Leaving the Pavilion of Knowledge. Chapter 1576 Leaving the Pavilion of Knowledge. After he left, Senior Bai immediately sought an audience with Su Jiechi. Once they met, Senior Bai informed her of everything Yuan had done. He's already capable of fighting divine kings despite being only a spirit king. I mocked him for his slow cultivation speed not long ago. Su Jiechi wore an astonished expression on her beautiful face, something that rarely happened. Moreover, they're not ordinary divine kings, but real immortals with vast experience. Senior Bai sighed. He continued, anyway, his monstrous talent is one thing. Killing a member of the Nine Heavens Law and Order is another. I'm afraid they might give us trouble in the future. About that, the Nine Heavens Law and Order have already acted. Su Jechi suddenly said. What? Senior Bai's eyes widened at this new information. The leader has already contacted the Demon Sealing Clan and Demon Sealing Grotto, and these two powerhouses have dispatched their experts, Su Jechi explained. Isn't that really bad? What should we do? Senior Bai asked. Su Jechi pondered for a moment before speaking. We won't do anything until we need to. Let's just see where this goes. Are you sure? What if it's already too late by then? Are you still underestimating Yuan after all this? He won't go down so easily, and we'll have more than enough time to react. Kellen will be with him, as well, no? Senior Bai nodded. Kellen wishes to remain in the lower heavens a little longer. Permission granted. Make it his mission to protect Yuan, too. However, don't spoil him. Only act when absolutely necessary. Su Jechi said. I understand. We also have a member within the Demon Sealing Clan. I'll notify him of the situation. Su Jechi added. Senior Bai nodded. After talking a little longer, Senior Bai returned to Kellen to pass Su Jechi's decision to him. Meanwhile, the Nine Heavens went into turmoil after news that the Demon Sealing Clan and the Demon Sealing Grotto had dispatched most of their experts in some kind of expedition. Fuck, are we going to war with demons again? No, they are looking for a single demon. What? They dispatched so many people for a single demon? Did they find the demon emperor that escaped previously? Apparently, this one is even more dangerous. How long has it been since the Demon Sealing Clan's been this active? It's been thousands of years. Unfortunately, their activity isn't something to be celebrated but dreaded. Somewhere in the Demon Sealing Grand Library, a beautiful woman sat before a scroll with a ponderous face. I wonder how the founder's doing. Hopefully, I'll get to see him again soon. Yanhara muttered to herself as she stared at the scroll with the demon's description. As a master demon sealer, she was also dispatched to the lower heavens. Meanwhile, Yuan and Shimeli spent several more hours at the Pavilion of Knowledge before leaving. Are you leaving already? Xian Kun asked them when he noticed them exiting the room. Yes, we've finished reading all of the materials. Yuan nodded. I see. I hope it was helpful to you. It was. I learned some new things about the Immortal Monarch and his companions, mostly about the 9 Divine Supremes. If you ever need information on anything, don't hesitate to visit our Pavilion of Knowledge. Here is our medallion. There are other Pavilion of Knowledge in other places with different names, but they all serve the same purpose. Our Pavilion of Knowledge happens to be the first one to be founded. Xian Kun handed him a purple medallion with an image of a pavilion and the word knowledge engraved into it. Thank you. Yuan accepted the medallion and tossed it into his spatial ring. Xian Kun shook his head and said, No, I should be thanking you. Because of you, we know the Immortal Monarch is still alive out there somewhere. You have no idea how much this means to me, to many beast clans in the 9 heavens. What does it mean? Shimeli asked out of curiosity. Well, for starters, there will be a massive movement to find the Immortal Monarch soon. Xian Kun revealed with a serious face. Yuan raised an eyebrow and inquired, and what will they do once they find him? The Immortal Monarch's era ended long ago. The Immortal Monarch's era may have ended, but many still revere him. He is akin to their god, a being above humans and beasts. His return will have unfathomable significance that I cannot even begin to comprehend. Xian Kun spoke with a dazed look on his face. Yuan didn't know how to react to that and remained silent. As they made their way downstairs, their presence caught Bai Ning's attention, who also appeared to be leaving. Where are you going after this? Bai Ning asked him. I don't know. He shrugged. What about you? I have to return to my family temporarily to report some things. Did you not notice the disturbance from earlier? She asked with a raised eyebrow. I felt many powerful ripples, but I am not the type to stick my nose in others' business. Yuan replied with a smile. Good on you. It was a mess out there. Bai Ning sighed. Oh. What happened? He asked with a curious face. A fight between immortals and some crazy bastard, the same bastard that beat my brother. Bai Ning clenched her fist as she recalled him. The masked individual? He was there. Did you avenge your brother? Yuan asked with a worried face. Bai Ning merely sighed at his question, her expression darkening with every passing moment. I see. Yuan wore a look of understanding and didn't inquire further. Well, I hope you'll get to avenge your brother next time. She vigorously nodded. I won't let him escape a third time. Then I'll see you later. After bowing to each other, Yuan left the Pavilion of Knowledge with Shi Mei, who tried hiding her face by looking away from Bai Ning. Bai Ning stared at Shi Mei's back as she walked to the exit. She looks a little familiar, but from where? She wondered inwardly. Chapter 1577 100 million. Chapter 1577 100 million. Once Yuan and Shi Mei left the Pavilion of Knowledge, they disappeared into the Purple Sea. Bai Ning left shortly after and returned to her clan in the upper heavens to update them on the situation. Where are we going now? Shi Mei asked Yuan as they soared across the Purple Sea. A place that will allow me to kill a lot of magical beasts, he calmly said. Why? Shi Mei raised an eyebrow. Although divine beasts and magical beasts are beasts, magical beasts are typically simple-minded and instinct-driven animals mutated through spiritual energy, so divine beasts don't feel anything even if magical beasts are slaughtered. In fact, divine beasts often slaughter and consume magical beasts, which is akin to humans cultivating with spirit stones and monster cores. I need to kill 100 million entities. He sighed. 100 million? Shi Mei's jaw dropped at this astonishing number that would take years of constant grinding. I would love to ask why you need to kill so many, but am a little afraid to do so. Shi Mei swallowed nervously. Yuan chuckled and said, You just asked. Anyway, it's a quest, something I need to do to become stronger. You're already powerful enough to kill immortals. I cannot imagine how much more powerful you can become. No, I am not powerful enough to kill immortals. I only managed to kill that one because his cultivation was restricted. If I had to fight him at full power, he'd easily kill me. Yuan shook his head at reality. Still, I don't think anyone else out there can boast of defeating someone 9 realms above their own strength. With so many experts from the upper heavens showing up, I will need to become strong, much stronger if I want to protect you and everyone. A glint of determination flickered within Yuan's eyes. We could have asked Xian Kuan, but we had already left the Pavilion of Knowledge. Shi Mei then said. It's fine. I intend to return to the others first. We can figure out the rest afterward. After returning to the Cultivator's Haven, where Meishio and the others are in seclusion, Yuan said to Shi Mei, You can return to training if you want. I'll be away for a few days. I've had enough training for now. I'll take a look around the city while I wait for your return, she said. Yuan nodded, Stay safe. She chuckled, Don't worry, I doubt many Bai Shutao are out there. Yuan logged off the next moment. Once he returned to Earth, Yuan went to relax inside the bathroom by soaking in medicine. Even though the medicine no longer had any effect on his body, it still felt better than an ordinary hot bath. After getting out of the bathroom, Yuan noticed a card placed on the desk beside the bed. He picked it up and read its contents. Chairman Li has contacted us on. The Great Battlefield has finished with its renovations and will resume faction wars soon. Our faction war with Fiery Garden of Hell has been scheduled. 2 days ago, Luckily, I finished my business in Cultivation Online earlier, or I would have missed the faction war, he mumbled to himself. The Demon Sealing faction and Fiery Garden of Hell was scheduled to begin in 3 days. He went to the training grounds to see if anyone was there, but it was empty. Everyone was busy with their training in cultivation online. With nothing else to do, Yuan went to the balcony and started playing the zither to pass the time. A few hours later, Mei Feng knocked on the door. "You can enter." Mei Feng walked straight to the balcony and said, "You saw the note, right?" "Yes." "Do you really intend to fight the faction war alone?" "Yes, but I'll need you there to be the ruler," he calmly nodded. "Of course, I'll be there. I'll make my way to the Eternal Lotuses now. I'll see you at the great battlefield." Sometime later, Yuan disappeared into the clouds, speeding toward the Eternal Lotuses' headquarters. When he arrived, the guards at the entrance instantly recognized him and said, "Our leader is expecting your arrival, player Yuan." Yuan followed one of them inside and was led directly to Bai Lianhua's room. "Welcome, Yuan. I've been anticipating your match since Miss Mei Feng told me about it 2 days ago." Bai Lianhua greeted him with a bright and beautiful smile. "If I was any slower with my business in cultivation online, I would have missed it and disappointed you." Yuan smiled. "But you didn't. Anyway, Yu Rou is in her room." Yuan nodded. Before you go to her, I'd like to thank you again for all your help. The resources you've given us greatly benefited every member of our faction, and our faction's prowess skyrocketed in a short time. That was the purpose to begin with. Maybe you'll be able to get your revenge on the fiery locust swarm soon." Bai Lianhua's eyebrows suddenly raised, and she said, "Unfortunately, that may no longer be possible, as the fiery locust swarm had been disbanded after their rank was stripped and their leader and a majority of their members had been banned from participating in further faction wars for using drugs during their match with the Demon's Sealing faction." "Oh, right. I forgot they did something like that." Yuan chuckled. Fiery Queen and her faction also faced ridicule since the fiery locust swarm was under them. Bai Lianhua added. "So they must be extra pissed off right now. This is great. It'll make our match even more entertaining." Yuan left to meet with Yu Rou shortly after. The following day, Yuan traveled to the great battlefield with Yu Rou and Bai Lianhua. When he arrived, Mei Feng was already waiting for him, alongside the other members of the Demon's Sealing faction. This time, every member was present. However, none of them would be participating in the faction war and were there as mere spectators. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc. Chapter 1578 Fighting the Fiery Garden of Hell. Chapter 1578 Fighting the Fiery Garden of Hell. "I was really hoping you didn't show up so we could have some fun," Wang Ming remarked as Yuan and his group arrived. "Sorry, but I really need to do this alone," Yuan said with an apologetic smile. "It's fine, but we have the next one." "Of course." As they made their way to the arena, their group drew the attention of everyone they passed, like a group of celebrities. "Look! The Demon's Sealing faction is finally here. It looks like their entire faction will be present for this faction war. That's only natural. They're against the fiery garden of hell, after all. Even player Yuan won't be able to fight so many players alone. Who knows? With the new changes, anything's possible. No, it'll definitely be much more difficult for player Yuan if everyone can use deadly techniques. I'm sure player Yuan has some ridiculously powerful attacks that can wipe out thousands of players in the blink of an eye. Even if that's the case, I doubt he would be able to use those techniques too much before running out of chi." The people speculated and debated on their faction war, unaware that Yuan was planning to fight the fiery garden of hell alone. Meanwhile, the fiery garden of hell was already gathering inside the new and improved arena. The arena was expanded several times its original size, and hazardous areas, such as a river of real lava and deadly traps, were spread throughout it. The arena itself could easily accommodate 10 million players at once, so there was plenty of room for even the largest factions to go wild. Due to the formation that prevents death and serious injuries, the technique evaluation was no longer required, making faction wars more accessible and exciting. A record number of people showed up to spectate the faction war between the Demon's Sealing faction and the Fiery Garden of Hell, not to mention the number of people watching from home and other places. At this moment, more than half of the world tuned in to watch the faction war, to see how the Demon's Ceiling faction would deal with the fiery Garden of Hell and its impressive number of players. "I've been waiting for you, Yuan." Chairman Li's face brightened like a light bulb after seeing Yuan and the rest of the Demon's Ceiling faction. "Do I have to do anything before we can start the faction war?" Yuan asked. "No, we can start once it's time." Yuan nodded and said, "Then I'll make my way to the arena." "Good luck, brother," Yuro said to him. The others followed, but Chairman Li's eyebrows raised when the Demon's Ceiling faction also started saying it. Seeing Chairman Li's puzzled face, Wang Ming said, "Only Yuan will be participating in the faction war. We're just here as spectators." What? You intend on fighting the fiery Garden of Hell alone? All 600,000 of them? Chairman Li's eyes widened with shock as he asked Yuan. "Yes, I do." Yuan calmly acknowledged. But that's... Chairman Li was at a loss for words. He couldn't imagine how someone could fight so many people at once, not even someone like Yuan. Yuan smiled and said, "There's a reason I created the formation. Of course, I wanted to make faction wars safer for everyone, but it's also so I can fight with fewer restrictions." Chairman Li still couldn't find any words. Yuan continued walking to the exit, quickly disappearing from the waiting room. Mei Feng followed him since she had to be the ruler. "He's serious?" Chairman Li uttered in a dazed voice. "He never jokes around in these sorts of situations." Wang Ming chuckled. Sometime later, Yuan appeared in the arena. When the spectators saw this, the entire stadium erupted with cheering. However, the cheering quickly quieted once the spectators realized only 2 members from the Demon's Ceiling faction were present. "Huh? Where's the rest of the members?" someone asked out loud. "Maybe they couldn't show up, just like the last faction war?" "That's impossible. I saw the entire Demon's Ceiling faction at the airport. They're definitely here. So where the hell are they? The match is about to begin in 10 minutes. Look over there. The rest of the Demon's Ceiling faction members are in the spectators area." Someone suddenly shouted, his arm pointed at a specific location in the stadium meant for VIPs. "No way, they're here as spectators? Does this mean player Yuan wants to fight the fiery Garden of Hell alone? That's crazy. Ha ha ha. His arrogance knows no bounds. Are the fiery Garden of Hell aware of this? Well, find out soon." Yuan, who showed up alone in the arena to face the fiery Garden of Hell, shocked every spectator watching. Nobody knew what he was trying to achieve or what his thought process was, but many people were mad. "Fuck. I can't believe I woke up early for this shit. I can't believe I actually bet money on the Demon's Ceiling faction's victory. What was I thinking?" After realizing that Yuan planned to fight the fiery Garden of Hell alone, many people became desperate. They gambled the rest of their money on the fiery Garden of Hell's victory, hoping to recoup some of their losses. Meanwhile, Fiery Queen had someone scout the arena using a scouting technique. What? Only player Yuan is on the field, excluding the ruler? Fiery Queen couldn't believe what she was hearing and had the scouter do it again. Yet, the scout reconfirmed that Yuan was alone. That bastard actually dares to face us alone? How much does he intend to look down on me? Fiery Queen gritted her teeth in anger instead of feeling relieved that he was alone. 5 minutes before the match, a familiar voice resounded through the broadcasting speakers. "Hello, everyone. It's me, Yan Xiaoxiao, and I will be the commentator for this faction war. Before we start, I would like to announce that the highly anticipated Demon's Ceiling faction interview will be released after this faction war is concluded, so stay tuned for that." Chapter 1579 A Display of Overwhelming Prowess. Chapter 1579 A Display of Overwhelming Prowess. Now then, as you can see for yourself, it appears that player Yuan intends to fight the fiery Garden of Hell by himself. That's 1 to 600,000 players. What kind of secret trick does he have up his sleeves to have so much confidence? Yan Xiaoxiao spoke with excitement. She was one of the very few people who weren't angry at Yuan and even believed in him. Before we begin the match, allow me to give you all a brief explanation of the new rules. Due to the generosity of a profound expert in formations, the great battlefield has gone through several renovations that will enhance our players' experience and our entertainment. With this formation, we will no longer have to worry about accidental deaths, allowing the players to truly go all out with their powerful techniques. However, while players won't die even if a sharp sword strikes their neck, they will still feel some of the pain, so it's not completely risk-free. Although players can no longer die, they will still carry a badge that represents their life, and if broken, they will be disqualified. A player will also be disqualified if they are knocked unconscious, which may happen if they suffer enough damage. We will now briefly demonstrate the formation's functions. 2 individuals appeared inside the arena and, before hundreds of millions of spectators, began hacking their sharp swords at each other's bare bodies without any hesitation or holding back. Many powerful blows later, not a single life-threatening injury could be seen on their body. Besides a few bruises, they looked otherwise completely fine. As you just witnessed, this formation is very reliable. Yan Xiaoxiao commented as the 2 demonstrators left the arena. The crowd cheered loudly, causing the entire stadium to tremble. Sometime later, Yan Xiaoxiao received word that the faction war would officially begin. Alright, you've all been waiting for long enough. The faction war between Demon's Ceiling faction, player Yuan and Fiery Garden of Hell will begin now. A flare shot straight into the sky before exploding into a blue mist, signifying the start of the faction war. Once Fiery Queen saw this, she pointed toward the direction of Yuan's castle and shouted in a commanding voice, "Teach that arrogant bastard what happens when he underestimates us, the Fiery Garden of Hell." However, before the 600,000 members of the Fiery Garden of Hell could go anywhere, they halted their advancement and stared at the massive figure in the distance with bewildered expressions. Meanwhile, Yuan activated God of War's astral arts the moment the match began. What the fuck is that? It's huge. A giant. It's a giant. The spectators watched with wide eyes and mouths as Yuan controlled the avatar, sweeping the arena with a golden sword. Seeing this, the players on the field dropped their weapons and immediately began running away. Yet, none was able to outrun the sword. The moment the avatar struck the ground, the entire great battlefield shook violently, and a deep fissure appeared in the arena. Before the Fiery Garden of Hell members could even leave their base, over 300,000 players were removed from the faction war with a single strike. In the blink of an eye, Yuan had annihilated half of the Fiery Garden of Hell's players. The spectators were speechless. Yan Xiaoxiao was speechless. There was not a single person watching who wasn't shocked by what they had just witnessed. Once she snapped out of her daze, Yan Xiaoxiao commented, her voice filled with excitement, "Heavens! What a power play!" Player Yuan disqualified 301,283 players with a single strike the moment the match began. How will Fiery Queen and her faction respond to this? After the sudden attack, Fiery Queen sat on her buttocks with a dazed look on her face as she stared at the golden giant that overlooked them from above like a god, feeling like an ant. It's not over. He must have consumed most, if not all, of his energy on that one attack. Fiery Queen eventually recovered. The very next moment, not wanting to finish the faction war too quickly, Yuan deactivated God of War's astral arts. Fiery Queen misunderstood this and became convinced that Yuan had exhausted all of his energy. The remaining Fiery Garden of Hell players struggled to get back on their feet before advancing toward Yuan's castle again. However, before they could take more than 10 steps, a beam of light suddenly appeared from the direction of their destination. This beam of light contained an immense amount of spiritual energy, and everyone struck by it was instantly knocked unconscious. The same thing happened to those hit by the God of War's astral arts. Suddenly, another 50,000 Fiery Garden of Hell players were removed from the battlefield. My God! What on earth was that laser technique just now? I have never seen, Yan Xiaoxiao cried out loud. Before Yan Xiaoxiao could even finish her sentence, Yuan launched another heaven-splitting sword strike at the fiery garden of hell, defeating another 32,000 players in the blink of an eye. Several more heaven-splitting sword strikes appeared shortly after, giving fiery garden of hell no room to breathe as they were bombarded with powerful techniques from across the arena. Less than a minute had passed since the match began, yet fiery garden of hell's impressive 600,000 player number had been reduced to just 100,000. The spectators were unsure of what they were witnessing, but as Yuan's overwhelming abilities became apparent, a palpable fear began to spread among them. If it weren't for the formation, he would have killed 500,000 people just like that. What kind of monstrous power is that? What if he suddenly decides to use it for evil? Who could stop him then? These kinds of questions began to arise in people's minds. They feared that Yuan was too powerful, that he wielded unchecked and uncontrollable power that could spell the end of the world if he chose to end it. Chapter 1580 A Display of Overwhelming Prowess, 2. Chapter 1580 A Display of Overwhelming Prowess, 2, Queen. What should we do? We're completely powerless right now and are no different than sitting ducks waiting to be slaughtered. One of the Fiery Garden of Hell members suddenly cried out loud. Fiery Queen didn't immediately respond. She surveyed her surroundings with a dazed look, taking in the devastated scene. Over 80% of her forces had been defeated in less than a minute, but they still had 100,000 players remaining. If Yuan had exhausted all of his energy, they still had a good chance of defeating him. There's no need to despair. We may have lost a lot of players, but we are still 100,000 strong. Player Yuan's definitely exhausted his chi this time. This is our chance to defeat him once and for all. Fiery Queen shouted. She pointed in Yuan's direction with a whip in hand and continued, advance. The players quickly scrambled to their feet and started running toward Yuan's castle for the third time with their eyes peeled open for incoming attacks. He stopped attacking. I think he's really out of energy. We need to hurry and reach him before he recovers. Move. Move your asses. We cannot allow him to recover even slightly. The fiery garden of hell began advancing like madmen, almost as though they were racing each other to see who reached Yuan first. Even if they don't have the capability to defeat Yuan, they could still hope to delay his recovery. However, unbeknownst to them, Yuan still had plenty of spiritual energy. In fact, had been holding back the majority of his strength this entire time. If had used his full strength, or even half of it, the players wouldn't have survived it, even with the formation's protection. Seeing how desperately the fiery garden of hell was trying to reach him, Yuan sat on the ground before completely lying down, looking like he was going to take a nap. What in God's name? Player Yuan appears to be taking a nap in the middle of the war. Did he run out of energy after using so many powerful techniques at once? Yan Xiaoxiao exclaimed. He really loves to show off, doesn't he? Wang Ming chuckled at this scene. He's just bullying them at this point. Shi Lang shook his head with a slight smile. The arena was so massive that it took the fastest player in Fiery Garden of Hell nearly 20 minutes of straight sprinting to finally reach Yuan. That bastard's asleep? The player almost couldn't believe his eyes when he saw Yuan casually resting on his back, seemingly without a care in the world. The player immediately thought about launching a sneak attack, but he quickly became doubtful whether Yuan was actually asleep or not. What was I thinking? Unless he knocked himself out after exhausting himself, there's no way he would actually be asleep. This is obviously a trap. However, even if it was a trap, the player couldn't stand there and do nothing while Yuan continued to recover his energy. He had to do something. The next moment, after taking a few deep breaths, the player made his move. Using his movement technique, he closed their distance almost instantly. With a dagger in his grasp, the player aimed for the badge hanging by Yuan's waist. However, when the player reached Yuan, he saw that Yuan's eyes were suddenly opened, and they were staring right into his eyes. The player felt an incredible chill throughout his entire body, almost like he was suddenly swimming naked in ice water. Unfortunately, it was already too late to stop, and the adrenaline in his blood made him move even faster. Die for me, you monster! The player roared as his dagger inched closer to Yuan's life badge. Right as the dagger was millimeters away from touching Yuan's badge, the player suddenly found himself unable to move even the slightest, almost as if he was frozen in time. Before the player could even react, Yuan casually smacked him in the face, sending him flying across the arena until he hit another player several minutes away. Where the hell did you come from? The player struck by the one who got hit cried out loud. However, the player couldn't respond, as he was knocked unconscious. Eventually, Fiery Queen and the rest of the players reached Yuan, who was no longer napping on the ground but hovering in the air instead. What took you so long? I fell asleep waiting for you, Yuan said as his gaze stared at Fiery Queen. Shut up! Fiery Queen bellowed with an enraged expression. Keep acting arrogant, but we all know that you've already exhausted your energy. Oh, really? What gave it away? Yuan smiled. Unless you have unlimited qi, there's no way you're not exhausted by now. But I had plenty of time to rest. Ha! Who are you trying to fool? You wouldn't be able to recover completely even if we gave you an entire day. Yuan laughed. Fiery Queen, you don't learn, do you? How many times do I have to teach you this lesson? What lesson? Fiery Queen frowned. That you'd never be able to defeat me. Yuan activated God of War's astral art again. The golden giant returned and even looked bigger than before. Fiery Queen and the other players' faces immediately darkened, and their hearts all dropped at the same time. Fiery Queen, let this be my last warning to you. If I have to deal with you again, it won't be so peaceful. Yuan proceeded to bombard Fiery Queen and the remaining players with a barrage of attacks. Each time the golden giant swung its sword, the entire island would shake, and a new fissure would open up in the ground. After destroying almost the entire arena, Yuan deactivated the technique and descended before Fiery Queen, who had purposefully left alone. Fiery Queen stared at him with a dumbfounded face. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. In the end, Yuan destroyed her badge without uttering another word. Chapter 1581 Controversies. Chapter 1581 Controversies. Fiery Queen stared at her destroyed badge with a dazed face. Although she sustained almost no physical damage during the faction war, the damage dealt to her mentally was immense and profound. This overwhelming sense of defeat and helplessness made her recall their previous confrontation and how he slaughtered all of the exiles. Tears began flowing from Fiery Queen's eyes, but Yuan did not linger to watch her weep and was already walking away. Despite the Demon's Sealing faction, Yuan's overwhelming victory, nobody in the crowd cheered, and the place was so silent that a pin drop could be heard from miles away. Eventually, Yan Xiaoxiao broke the silence by announcing the winner. The winner of this faction war is Demon's Sealing faction. Or should I say player Yuan, who single-handedly defeated 600,000 players by himself. Yan Xiaoxiao quickly appeared in the arena and sprinted to Yuan, fearing that he might leave before she could interview him. Congratulations on the Demon's Sealing faction's second victory. With this momentous victory, the Demon's Sealing faction is now ranked 5th in the world. I'm sure the speed of your rise broke several records, but we can talk about that later. Right now, I want to know what you have to say. Yuan grabbed the microphone and spoke calmly. I see a lot of disappointed people in the audience. Were you expecting something else? I'm sorry if I disappointed you, but I warned you the last time, never bet against me. Anyway, I've had enough fun of faction wars for now, so I will no longer be participating in them. With that said, if you wish to challenge the Demon's Sealing faction, I'm sure the other members will be more than willing to entertain you. Yuan returned the microphone to Yan Xiaoxiao before walking out of the arena. The spectators remained silent, trying to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Given the absurdity of everything, many wondered if they had somehow logged into without realizing it. Although the members of the Demon's Ceiling faction tried to look calm, they were also inwardly shocked. They had never seen Yuan fight so fiercely, even during their training. I knew there was a wide gap between us, but I didn't think it was this ridiculous. Shi Lang muttered in a dazed voice. Forget about the faction war. He can probably conquer the world with those techniques. I wouldn't doubt it. Wang Ming smiled. After the faction war concluded, topics on the subject began spreading online like wildfire. Even though the faction war ended already, I still cannot believe it ended so fast. I waited an entire month for this faction war, and the fiery Garden of Hell was defeated in less than half an hour, only because player Yuan waited 20 minutes for them to reach him. Controversies on whether Yuan should be allowed to participate in future faction wars also began filling up the internet. Player Yuan is too powerful. He needs to be banned from future faction wars to keep things entertaining and fair. Player Yuan is too much. He's too arrogant. Fiery Queen did not deserve to be bullied like that. Most spectators who watched Yuan's faction war felt an indescribable sensation after the match. It was a feeling they were not familiar with. Gradually, they began to recognize that feeling as existential fear. After witnessing someone who was beyond their understanding, they began to question the purpose of their own existence. However, unwilling to accept their inferiority, these people banded together to drag down the one who had made them feel that way. Player Yuan was definitely using drugs to enhance his strength. Ban Player Yuan. Remove the Demon's Ceiling faction from the rankings. Countless calls for the Cultivators Association to ban Player Yuan and the Demon's Ceiling faction flooded the internet. The sentiment only intensified over time, with more and more people echoing the same demand. Chairman Li, under pressure not only from the public but also from the legacy families and other powerful backgrounds, found himself in a difficult position. The legacy families and 10 great families have always wanted to get rid of Yuan, but they have never had the opportunity to do so until now. Soon, even government agencies from around the world got involved. Due to Yuan's prowess, which they perceived as a threat, they had no choice but to intervene. However, the governments had no interest in the Cultivators Association or the faction wars. They only had one thing in their sights, Yuan himself. Shortly after the faction war had concluded, every single government agency in the world got together. They watched the faction war between Yuan and Fiery Garden of Hell from beginning to end before they started their conversation. They started the conversation by revealing all of their information on Yuan, from the day he joined the orphanage to the current day. Although the government hasn't acted until now, they have been gathering information on Yuan since the day they realized he was Player Yuan just in case of situations like this. This person clearly has enough power to threaten not just a country but the entire world. He's too dangerous to be wandering around without any supervision. Then what do you suggest? That we chain him down? Who here has the power to do that? I do not know what has to be done or what can be done. I only know that something must be done before he gets out of control. He's currently living within the Dragon Spiral Mountain, right? Perhaps we can get the Lord to deal with him. The room fell silent for a moment. The Lord's identity as a divine beast was no secret among government agencies, but only those with the highest level of clearance knew about it. If it's the Lord, he definitely has the power to control Yuan. No, he might be the only entity in this world who can do so. But would he even help us? The Lord is a reasonable entity. I'm sure he'll understand our worries. Chapter 1582 Yuan's Offer. Chapter 1582 Yuan's Offer. Brother, is there anything you can do about this? Inside her room, Yuro shoved her phone at Yuan's face, showing him all of the negative things being said about him with a concerned face. After the faction war, wanting to spend a little more time with his sister, Yuan left with Yuro and Bai Lianhua while the others returned to the Dragon Spiral Mountain. Yuan glanced at the topic being made about him and shrugged. What do you want me to do? Tell them to shut up. I don't know, but they're demanding you to be banned from future faction wars. And it's not just a few individuals. Yuan said with a worried face. I kind of agree with them. I'm simply too powerful. Any faction war with my participation will be a guaranteed victory for the demon-sealing faction by a landslide. I don't intend to participate in more matches unless necessary, so this ban won't really affect me that much. But I enjoy watching you kicking everyone's ass. Faction wars will no longer be the same for me after seeing your performance today. They won't be as entertaining. Senior sister, you should say something too. Yuan turned to look at Bai Ning, who was leaning on the wall with a perplexed expression on her face. I don't know what to say. I doubt the Cultivators Association would ban him because of this, but I have a feeling that the 10 great families will add to the pressure. There's no chance in hell they'd let this opportunity to drag Yuan down slip away. Suddenly, Bai Ning received a call on her private cell phone. Hello? Father? It was her father, Bai Mengyao, calling. Yuan? Yeah, he's with me. Why are you asking? Huh? Seriously? Bai Lianhua's face became filled with shock. Okay. I'll tell him. After hanging up, Bai Lianhua turned to look at Yuan with a heavy gaze. What's wrong? Yuan asked. I was right. The 10 great families are working together to pressure the Cultivators Association to put a ban on you. However, that's not what's most concerning. Apparently, government agencies around the world are wary of your capabilities and have gathered to discuss your existence. Yuan raised an eyebrow at this news. The government? What are they worried about? That I might take over the world or something? He spoke in a joking tone. Yet, Bai Lianhua nodded and said, yes, precisely that. They are worried about the prowess you displayed today. As of this moment, they see you as an unpredictable disaster waiting to happen. Even if you swear that you won't take over the world, they won't feel safe until they have you under their control. So what do you think they'll do to me? Yuan suddenly asked. Despite being on the government's watch list, Yuan didn't seem to be all that concerned. Well, they'll most likely try to put a leash on you, control you. However, they won't approach you directly and will most likely. Bai Lianhua paused midway and turned to look at Yuan with a worried frown on her face. They will most likely approach Yuan and those close to you first. Only once they have enough leverage over you will they finally approach you, Bai Lianhua sighed. Is that so? Yuan looked at Yuan and asked, want to spend some time with me in the Dragon Spiral Mountain? At least until everything calms down. Nobody will be able to bother you while you're with me. Of co. Yuan closed her mouth just as quickly as she opened it. She wanted to agree, but she had her own obligations at the Eternal Lotuses and couldn't be selfish anymore. She turned to look at Bai Lianhua, seemingly asking for permission. Bai Lianhua smiled and said, go spend some time with your brother. You barely left this place since you joined our faction over a year ago. It's about time you switch sceneries, not to mention the situation. This is also for your safety. Thank you. Yuan nodded. Yuan looked at Bai Lianhua and said, you know, the Dragon Spiral Mountain has enough room for the entire Eternal Lotuses to relocate. The spiritual energy there is also much denser than here, so you'll all benefit from being there. Bai Lianhua was momentarily stunned by his suggestion. After snapping out of it, she said, I know it's incredibly expensive to live there, if you even get approved by its landlord. There's no way they'd let so many people move there at once. Yuan smiled and said, I happen to be very close with the landlord, so we should have no problem getting you guys settled there. Of course, this is only a suggestion, an offer. You don't have to take it if you don't want it. Unlike before, Bai Lianhua didn't immediately reject his offer. Living inside the Dragon Spiral Mountain would not only provide them with security but also benefit their cultivation. However, the most important factor was that she would get to be neighbors with Yuan. Seeing Bai Lianhua seriously pondering moving her headquarters to Dragon Spiral Mountain, Yuan gave her another push. You also won't need to worry about living expenses since that'll already be taken care of. After a moment of silence, Bai Lianhua replied, can I give you an answer later? I need to speak with the others first. This decision is too big for me to decide alone. Yuan nodded, sure. Then I will immediately speak with the others. Bai Lianhua didn't waste any time and gathered all the faction members before telling them about Yuan's offer. We get to be neighbors with the Demon Sealing faction and player Yuan. I agree. I heard that only the elite of elites are allowed to live there. I also agree with our relocation. The members were quick to give their opinions on the matter, and everyone agreed to move to the Dragon Spiral Mountain because they would only benefit from it. Chapter 1583 Controlling Yuan. Chapter 1583 Controlling Yuan, that was fast. Yuan smiled when Bai Lianhua returned to the room much faster than had anticipated. Well, everyone's eager to move. Bai Lianhua replied with a bashful smile. Then it's settled. You guys can make the move whenever. I'll speak with the Lord once I return. Bai Lianhua nodded, okay. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. Yuan left with Yuro a few hours later. As Yuan and Yuro made their trip back to the Dragon Spiral Mountain, government officials were already there to speak with the Lord. However, before they could even reach the Lord, they had to deal with the manager first. Even as government officials, they couldn't enter the Dragon Spiral Mountain without her approval. What is your reason for visiting? Leah asked them with a nonchalant look on her face. We have some urgent matter that requires the Lord's attention. This world's balance is in jeopardy, and we believe the Lord is the only individual who can deal with it. Despite hearing this information, Leah remained uninterested and said, I will need more information than that, or are you implying that I don't qualify enough to hear it? The government officials exchanged glances with each other before giving a nod. One spoke a second later, we believe a certain individual has too much power and could be a potential time bomb strong enough to destroy this world if not controlled. He's currently wandering the world unrestricted as we speak, and would like the Lord to do something about it. Who is this individual? Leah narrowed her eyes. He used to go by Yutian, but he's known as Yuan right now, and he's a resident at the Dragon Spiral Mountain. Leah raised an eyebrow upon hearing this familiar name. After realizing the situation, Leah couldn't help but crack a chuckle. The government officials raised their eyebrows at Leah's reaction. Although they had met and spoken with her plenty of times, they had only seen her poker face, so it was an incredibly weird feeling to see her laugh, even if it was just slightly. Ahem. Leah cleared her throat and spoke, acting like nothing had happened. You need the Lord to control this Yuan individual, correct? I'll lead you to the Lord right now. Already? The government officials couldn't believe how fast they gained entrance. Typically, they would have to wait for Leah to contact the Lord before getting a response. Don't tell me the Lord is already aware of the danger Yuan proposes to the world? One of them speculated as they passed the gates, entering the Dragon Spiral Mountain. Maybe that's why she laughed at us, because they are already working on it. Sometime later, these government officials reached the peak of the mountain. Wait here for a bit, Leah said to them before disappearing for a few minutes. While they waited, Leah went to notify the Lord of their visit. Government officials? What do they want? That's a surprise. Leah smiled. The Lord found Leah's behavior to be unusual and immediately became suspicious. However, he didn't question her any further and said, Bring them to me. Of course. Leah left to bring the visitors to him. A few moments later, the government officials stood before the Lord's cave with their heads lowered so much their chin was kissing their chest. What are you all waiting for? This is an urgent matter, right? Go ahead and tell him what you told me. Leah spoke up when none of the government officials dared to speak without permission. The officials felt something was off about Leah, almost like she was entertaining herself with their situation. We greet the Lord of the Dragon Spiral Mountain. Today, we have an urgent matter to discuss. There is a particular individual we believe requires your attention. This individual possesses unfathomable power that threatens not only the balance of this world but also the world itself. He hasn't done anything requiring immediate action, but we believe it's only a matter of time, and at the speed he's growing, we should move as soon as possible before he becomes truly uncontrollable. This individual is a resident at the Dragon's Spiral Mountain. He used to be called Tian but is now widely known as Yuan, and we need you to put a collar on him." The moment Yuan's name was uttered, the atmosphere in the Dragon's Spiral Mountain changed, and a dreadful pressure appeared at the peak of the mountain, forcing all of the government officials to kneel on the ground. Lord? What is the meaning of this?" The government officials screamed in horror as the bones in their bodies began cracking. The pressure disappeared a few seconds later, but the officials remained on the ground with their bodies still screaming from pain. "I refuse," the Lord uttered in a cold voice a moment later without explaining any further. Despite their pain, the officials tried to change his mind. "Please. You're the only existence in this world who can control a monster like him. The world needs your help, Lord. Why are you refusing to help us? At least give us an explanation." "I will not repeat myself, nor do I owe you any explanation. Now get the hell out of my face before I lose my temper again." The Lord roared, blowing them away with the force of his voice. "But, the Lord has spoken. Unless you want to leave this mountain as a corpse, I suggest you leave now." Leah stepped forward and interrupted. The government officials gritted their teeth in frustration and began descending the mountain. Due to the pain in their body, they had to support each other as they slowly limped away. "Why didn't you try to stop them or convince them that Yuan isn't dangerous?" Leah asked the Lord after the officials left. "You think they'd listen to me? Humans are foolish and cowardly creatures, especially when their power and control are threatened." The Lord sighed. Anyway, this was bound to happen sooner or later. Let's wait and see how hell deal with this. Leah silently acknowledged. Chapter 1584 A Villain. Chapter 1584 A Villain. Fuck. Why did the Lord refuse to help us? Could he be afraid of Yuan? That's impossible. The Lord has an unfathomable cultivation. He could easily kill someone like Yuan. Whatever his reason is, we cannot leave without any results. Our supervisors will eat us alive if we return empty-handed. But what the hell are we supposed to do? The government officials stopped moving and decided to sit by the road to think. They were also in too much pain to walk and took this opportunity to heal. After some time, they considered returning to the peak for another attempt to convince the Lord, but no one actually dared, fearing that the Lord would kill them for such audacity. "There's nothing we can do here. I'm sure our supervisors will understand. Let's get out of here before there's a misunderstanding." "Yeah. It's not like we can argue with the Lord." The officials got back on their feet and began descending the mountain again. Sometime later, they noticed a handsome young man coming up the mountain from a distance. Despite his youthful appearance, he had a profound aura and exuded the presence of an expert. That's. Look over there. It's Yuan." The government officials immediately halted their steps when they recognized the young man to be Yuan, the very person they were trying to put under control. Yuan noticed these individuals long before they even saw him and had plenty of time to ponder how he should interact with them, if he even should. Once they were only several feet apart from each other, Yuan stopped in front of them with a friendly smile on his face. "Judging by your suits, you must be with the government. Did you already finish your discussion with the Lord?" "How did it go?" he asked. What are you talking about?" The official's eyes widened with surprise, almost as if they couldn't believe what they were hearing. Yuan pretended to look confused and said, "I thought you were here to see whether you can get the Lord to deal with me or something along that line. Was I mistaken?" "You." The government officials' faces darkened after hearing his words. However, they quickly realized the gravity of their situation. If they respond incorrectly and offend Yuan, it might trigger what they feared could happen. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Our supervisors are not trying to deal with you. We just want to make sure you don't accidentally destroy a city or the world." "Wow, that's quite the assumption there. How did you come up with such a conclusion? Is it because of my performance during the faction war?" That's. Before the officials could respond, Yuan continued, or is it because of the 10 great families? Are they telling you that I am dangerous and need to be dealt with? Well, it doesn't really matter. Tell your supervisors that I have no intention of being controlled, nor do I have any plans on overthrowing the government, as long as you know your place and don't touch my friends and family. In case they don't want to listen, tell them that what they'd witnessed during the faction war was only a small fraction of my full strength. If they want to see me prove it, they can go ahead and continue messing with me. The government officials trembled upon seeing Yuan's cold smile. They couldn't imagine Yuan possessing more power than what they'd already witnessed, but they didn't doubt him. Yuan suddenly walked forward until he was standing right in front of them. Are you afraid of me? Yuan placed his right hand on the official's shoulder and could immediately feel the man trembling in fear. There's no reason to fear me, at least not yet. As long as the government doesn't overstep its boundaries, I won't do anything to you guys. Yuan gave the man's shoulder a gentle pat before walking past them and disappearing into the formation. All of the officials fell to their knees once they could no longer sense Yuan's presence. Their bodies began sweating profusely, and their legs felt like tofu, almost as though they'd just escaped a near-death situation. None of the officials spoke to each other, as they all had their own thoughts to figure out. Sometime later, they stood up and left the Dragon's Spiral Mountain. They would not utter a single word until they returned to their supervisors, informing them of the Lord's response, as well as Yuan's warning to them. Meanwhile, Yuan met with the Lord, who had watched his conversation with the officials. You sounded like a villain back there. Are you sure that's how you want to appear? The Lord asked him. Yuan shrugged, they are the ones who branded me as one first. It wouldn't have mattered how I acted since I would still be a villain in their eyes. Anyway, I didn't come here to talk about them. The Eternal Lotuses, who is in an alliance with my Demon Sealing faction, would like to move their headquarters to the Dragon Spiral Mountain. My sister is there, and I would like to keep her close to me for now. Do you think that's possible? Of course, that's possible. Even if we don't have room, they'll make sure there's room. In fact, I have been thinking about clearing out the mountain so it's exclusively used by you and those close to you. Yuan was surprised to hear this and quickly said, there's no need to do that for me. What am I going to do with an entire mountain, anyway? I am fine with what I currently have, so just keep things the way they are. I understand. The Lord nodded. After chatting a little more, Yuan returned to his residence and contacted Bai Lianhua. Yes, I have received the Lord's approval, so you can move here whenever you want. Then we'll move there in a few days. I'll see you then. See you. Bai Lianhua immediately started the process after hanging up. Chapter 1585 Releasing the Interview. Chapter 1585 Releasing the Interview. Who the hell does that arrogant little brat think he is, threatening the government? Government agencies around the world were enraged when they were informed of the situation. They couldn't believe that they were being threatened by someone who barely just reached adulthood. Yet, that wasn't even the most irritating part. The fact they couldn't do anything about it was what truly infuriated them to the core. The Lord refused to help them for some reason, and Yuan lived inside the Dragon's Spiral Mountain, making things even more complicated than they already are. If they wanted to deal with Yuan, they had to wait until he left the Dragon's Spiral Mountain. Otherwise, they risk offending the Lord of the Mountain by conducting their business within his sacred land. The Lord possessed power and authority that far surpassed any other organization or individual in the world. The only saving grace for humanity was the Lord's indifference toward humans as long as they didn't mess with him. Many decades ago, the government tried to subdue the Lord. However, they quickly found out how foolish their actions were when the Lord effortlessly killed everyone responsible without leaving the mountain. Of course, the government tried nuclear weapons, but those were also rendered useless before they could even get close to the mountain. After the old government was annihilated by the Lord, a new one formed and signed a peace treaty with the Lord. The contract stipulated that they would not interfere with the Lord or any activities within Dragon's Spiral Mountain, declaring the place an independent power. This meant that the laws governing the majority of the world were irrelevant within Dragon's Spiral Mountain, and all business conducted there could not be judged by outside standards. I want the Dragon Spiral Mountain to on a 24-hour surveillance. Notify us immediately whenever Yuan leaves. But what are we going to do once he leaves? Ambush him? We don't have the power to do anything to him. We can figure that out later. For now, I want everything on him, from what he eats to breakfast to when he shits it out. If we cannot deal with Yuan, we can always target those around him. Contact the Demon's Sealing faction members and try to recruit them to our side. Be cautious and discreet. The entire room went silent after such an impossible task was given. It was already impossible enough to enter the Dragon Spiral Mountain, so how were they going to spy on Yuan to get information on him? The entire room went silent after such an impossible task was given. It was already impossible enough to enter the Dragon Spiral Mountain, so how are they going to spy on Yuan to get information on him? I guess we can try to convert someone that's already close to him on our side, but that has its own risks. What if they feed us incorrect information? What if they expose us? There's no such thing as risk-free in our line of work. Everything has a risk. The only question is whether or not we're willing to accept such risks. The room fell silent again. Eventually, they agreed to try to convert someone from the Demon's Sealing faction. Meanwhile, Yan Xiaoxiao just finished editing her interview with the Demon's Sealing faction and sent a copy to Mei Feng to get it approved. At the Demon's Sealing faction, Mei Feng watched the interview with Yu Rou and Yuan together. It's very well made and puts a good spotlight on the Demon's Sealing faction, which will definitely help us when everyone is trying to drag our name through the mud, Mei Feng commented after watching the interview. Do you think it'll stop people from talking badly about my brother? Yu Rou asked with a slight frown on her face. Unlikely, since most of the people speaking ill of Yuan are probably hired actors paid by the 10 great families and the government. This is very common practice for those who want to lower another's reputation. There's no need to worry about me, Yu Rou. Whether my reputation is good or bad, it won't change anything. Yuan said to her. I know that, but it's still frustrating to see people badmouth you every time I open up the internet. She sighed. Yuan suddenly placed a hand on her head and ruffled her hair. Brother? Don't waste your energy over something like that. It's not worth it. He looked at Mei Feng and continued, anyway, you can let Yan Xiaoxiao know that she can release the interview whenever she wants. Mei Feng nodded and immediately sent a message to Yan Xiaoxiao. Not even a minute later, Yan Xiaoxiao posted the interview on her personal website and social profiles, instantly gathering tens of thousands of views. In less than half an hour, the interview garnered over 100 million views, becoming a sensation on the internet. At first, there were many positive comments, praising the Demon's Sealing faction's unique lifestyle and the members' trust in Yuan. However, once the 10 great families and the trolls heard about the interview, they bombarded it with the usual negative comments. Yet, because these comments were made under Yan Xiaoxiao's profile, her immense fanbase was immediately enraged, considering it an attack on Yan Xiaoxiao herself. Thus, the trolls and Yan Xiaoxiao's fanbase began a war with each other. Later that night, Yu Rou approached Yuan and said, let's sleep together tonight. I don't mind, but... Yuan showed his room to her, where another individual was already sleeping on his bed. Oh, right. You sleep together with Chu Liuxiang. Yu Rou proceeded to stand there in silence, seeming in deep thought. I have been wondering about this for a while now, but why isn't Mei Xiu sleeping with you, too? Isn't she also your lover? I don't think it is fair to make her sleep in a separate room when Chu Liuxiang sleeps with you. Well, it's not like I am forcing her to be in a separate room. I also don't want to force her to sleep with us, so I'm just waiting for her to say something. Yuan said with a bittersweet smile. Is that so? Yu Rou mumbled. After another moment of silence, she said, I changed my mind. I'll go sleep with Mei Xiu tonight since it's been a while. Yuan nodded, and Yu Rou knocked on Meixius' room the following moment. Chapter 1586 Eternal Lotuses Relocation. Chapter 1586 Eternal Lotuses Relocation. Once Meishio answered the door, Yuro greeted her with a bright smile. Meishio, it's been a while since we've really spoken with each other. Let's sleep together tonight. Although she was a little surprised, Meishio agreed with a slight head nod. Sure. Come inside. Good night, brother. Yuro said as she strolled into the room. Good night. Meishio also said. Good night, you too. Once the door closed, Yuan returned to his room to sleep, as cultivating was pointless nowadays. Due to the Celestial Emperor's curse and his high cultivation base, his cultivation would go nowhere, even if he cultivated for years straight. Of course, he could always consume monster cores, but he had no reason to increase his cultivation on Earth any further. After all, he already had more than enough power to conquer the entire world if he so desired. Meanwhile, inside Mixius' room, Yuro muttered as she sat on the bed, wow, this is a really comfortable bed. Anyway, how have you been doing, Meishio? Is my brother treating you right? Meishio nodded with a smile. I've been doing great, and Yuan's treating me fine, too. Really? If that's the case, why are you still sleeping alone while Chu Liuxiang is sleeping in the same room as him? Yuro looked at her with doubtful eyes. I'm satisfied sleeping in my own room, and he does come sleep with me once in a while. Although she didn't mention it, she had actually heard Yuro's conversation with Yuan outside her room earlier. That's not good enough. We've been together since childhood, so you're like a second sibling to me, an elder sister. I will not allow you to lose to someone else. Lose. But I am not losing, at least, that's not how I see it. Meishio showed a stiff smile. After all, she was the first one to be accepted by Yuan. Yuro sighed and said, although I wasn't too surprised when I learned that you and my brother paired up since I knew it eventually happened, do you have any idea how shocked I was when I found out that he got a second lover? Is it really that surprising? Of course. I didn't know he was capable of doing that. Anyway, you should start sleeping in the same room as my brother. I know you want to. Yuro winked at her. After a moment of silence, Meishio spoke in a low voice. What about you? Huh? What about me? Yuro raised her eyebrows. Don't you also love him? Yuro was momentarily stunned by such a question, but she quickly snapped out of it and chuckled. Of course I do. He's my one and only brother, after all. Meishio gently shook her head. You know that's not what I mean. Yuro's body trembled slightly, clearly not expecting Meishio to question her in such a manner. I know, but you should also know that we're siblings. But you're not blood-related. That changes everything. Yuro shook her head and sighed. While that's true, it's our perspective that truly matters. I love him very much, and I'd do anything for him, but I don't know if I am ready, or will ever be ready, to treat him as anything other than my brother. Is that so? Seeing the dejected look on Yuro's face, Meishio decided to stop talking about this subject. After a moment of silence, Meishio sat on the bed and said, tell me about what it's like at the Eternal Lotuses. Sure. After closing the light, the two of them lay underneath the blankets, and Yuro started recalling her experience at the Eternal Lotuses. Once Yuro was finished, Meishio spoke about her adventures with Yuan and her progress in cultivation online. They ended up talking all night, only falling asleep once the sun began rising. Over the next few days, in order to know those around Yuan better, Yuro would spend most of her time chatting with the members of the Demon's Sealing faction. On the third day of Yuro's stay at the Dragon's Spiral Mountain, Bai Lianhua and the rest of the Eternal Lotuses were finally ready to move their headquarters. Early in the morning the following day, Bai Lianhua and the entire Eternal Lotuses showed up at the bottom of the Dragon's Spiral Mountain with several trucks full of items, from furniture to decorations. Yuan went to greet them alone. So, how does this work? Bai Lianhua asked. The manager is making her way here now. You can ask her in a bit. Leah showed up several minutes later and said, there are several unoccupied properties. Since your circumstances are unique and we haven't prepared a place for you, you can go ahead and pick the one you like best. Once you have picked your property, you can start moving your stuff. Leah looked at Yuan before handing him a notebook and said, "Since you recommended them, they're your responsibility. Everything you need to know is inside that notebook." Without further explanation, Leah turned around and disappeared. "Are we really welcome here?" Bai Lianhua swallowed nervously after seeing Leah's cold behavior. Yuan chuckled and said, "Don't worry about her. She's naturally grumpy like that. You'll get used to it very quickly." "I can hear you." Leah's angry voice resounded in an echo. Sometime later, Yuan brought Bai Lianhua and several high-ranking members inside the Dragon Spiral Mountain to look at the available spaces listed in the notebook Leah gave him. Most of the property in the lower and middle areas of the mountain was already occupied, but there were still plenty of options available. In the lower area, 2 large mansions remained, while the middle area had 3. As for the upper area, 5 homes were still unoccupied. The disparity in spiritual energy between the lower and middle areas is immense. "I cannot fathom what it'd be like in the upper areas," Bai Lianhua remarked as they entered the middle area. "I never even thought such quality of spiritual energy was possible on Earth." Another commented. "This place is a cultivator's heaven." Chapter 1587 Boot Camp. Chapter 1587 Boot Camp. A few hours have passed since Yuan started showing Bai Lianhua and the others the available properties within Dragon Spiral Mountain. All of the buildings were luxurious manors that were even bigger than Bai Lianhua's family home. While the upper area was more spacious, it was the higher spiritual energy quality that truly mattered. In the end, Bai Lianhua chose to live in the upper area while also staying as close as possible to the Demon's Sealing faction's residence. Here is a list of our rules. I doubt you will cause any trouble for the Dragon Spiral Mountain, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Yuan handed him a list of rules that was placed inside the notebook. Bai Lianhua accepted the list and spoke with a serious expression, "Don't worry, I will make sure we don't embarrass ourselves." Yuan smiled and said, "If you want, I can create a formation around your home that will prevent all commotion from leaving, so you won't have to worry about being too noisy to your neighbors." Bai Lianhua nodded, "That would be great. Thank you." Sometime later, Bai Lianhua signed the contract and began sending the trucks up the mountain. Once all of the items were laid out in front of the house, the members started moving them inside. Yu Rou showed up to help with the move since she was also part of the faction. Many hours later, once the moving was finished, the Eternal Lotuses began preparing for a massive feast to celebrate their new home, to which the entire Demon's Sealing faction was invited. Before we get this feast started, I would like to give a special shout-out to the one who made this all possible, Yuan. Bai Lianhua gestured for Yuan to go onto the stage, where she was standing. The feast was held in the training ground, which was the most spacious. The stage they were standing on was the same one they used for sparring in their old location, something they decided to transport to their new home. Once Yuan was on the stage, Bai Lianhua continued, in 3, 2, 1, "Thank you, Yuan." Everyone from Eternal Lotuses shouted. "Do you have anything to say to us?" Bai Lianhua asked Yuan once the noises calmed down. Yuan nodded and said, "Since we're in an alliance, it's only natural for us to help each other. Now, getting you all settled near us is only the first part. For the next part, I want to help you all grow stronger, and when I say stronger, I don't mean give you powerful techniques. I have already spoken to my faction about this, and we want to train you personally. Thus, we will have a 3-day boot camp session at the end of every month, where we will train you to become stronger than all of the other factions. Of course, this boot camp is not mandatory and not for everyone, but for those of you who wish to stand above the rest, it's your best chance of that." The Eternal Lotuses members exchanged glances with each other, their gaze filled with intrigue yet worry. "Since the month is already ending and you just moved here, we won't start until next month, but we will give you a 1-day trial later so you know what to expect come next month. With that said, let's enjoy ourselves." The feast began shortly after, with everyone stuffing their mouth with food and drinks. The feast continued into the night and even past midnight. Once the feast ended and everyone cleaned up the scene, the members of Eternal Lotuses began cultivating in their new environment. They knew the spiritual energy there was abundant and that their progress would be much faster than before, but when they finally experienced the difference firsthand, they were all profoundly shocked and elated. Ha ha ha. Although it's not as good as cultivation online, this is still multiple times faster than before. With this much spiritual energy, I should enter Spirit Master in no time. No wonder why people rush to ascend in cultivation online even if they're severely underleveled. This is worth the risk. None of the members of Eternal Lotuses were able to sleep that night, as if they were addicted to cultivating. 2 days later, Yuan and the rest of the Demon Sealing faction showed up at the Eternal Lotuses' residence with weapons in their grasp, looking like they wanted to start a war. If you wish to participate in the trial, go to this side. Otherwise, go to this side. Bai Lianhua instructed her members. In just a few moments, every member of Eternal Lotuses went to the participating side. Good. Bai Lianhua nodded in approval at their response. Now, divide everyone into groups based on their cultivation base, Wang Ming instructed as he stepped forward. Spirit warriors will be in one group, and spirit masters will be in another. A few minutes later, 4 different groups were formed from several thousand people. The first group contained about 1,000 spirit apprentices, while the second group had around triple that amount of spirit warriors. The third group had only several hundred spirit masters, and the last group had around 50 spirit grandmasters. All right. Group 1 and Group 2 will divide into smaller groups and follow me. Wang Bingbing raised her hand, gesturing for them to follow her. Hong Xiuquan, Chu Liuxiang, Mei Xiu, Wang Xiuying, and Shi Murong also followed her. I will take Group 3. Shi Lang said. And Group 4 is with me. Wang Ming said. What about me? Are you going to train me? Bai Lianhua asked Yuan while pointing at herself. No, shall be doing the honors. Yuan gestured to Li Jinsi. Hello. You're Li Jinsi, correct? Bai Lianhua greeted her with a respectful bow. Yes. I'll be in your care. Li Jinsi silently nodded. By the way, in addition to the sound concealing formation, I also covered this place with a second formation that's just like the one used at the Great Battlefield to prevent accidental death, so you don't need to worry about dying. Yuan suddenly said. Is that so? Bai Lianhua responded with a stiff smile. Chapter 1588 Boot Camp, 2. Chapter 1588 Boot Camp, 2, please. Spare me. You call this training? This is more like torture. The members of Eternal Lotuses quickly realized just how terrifying and outrageously difficult their boot camp was after only a few minutes. They were constantly being beaten and tossed around like ragdolls by the members of the Demon Sealing faction. What's wrong? Are you giving up already? We've just started. Wang Bingbing shouted at them like a drill instructor in military boot camp. Did you think it was going to be easy? If this is too much for you, give up. However, don't complain if your peers leave you in the dust. While not every member of the Demon Sealing faction screamed, not a single one of them was going easy on the members of Eternal Lotuses. In less than 10 minutes, over 10% of the participants tapped out, refusing to continue the boot camp trial. It was simply too much for them to handle. If you think this is bad, my training is several times worse than what you're experiencing now. Everything has a price, and this is the price for wanting to get strong fast. Shi Lang said as he wasted everyone in Group 3. Meanwhile, Bai Lianhua was also being tossed around by Li Jinsi. It's like I am fighting a relentless monster. She's not giving me any room to breathe, much less attack. Bai Lianhua cried inwardly as she was tossed left and right by Li Jinsi's heavy strikes despite blocking them. Half an hour later, 70% of the participants gave up. What do you think? Want to give it a go? Yuan looked at Yu Rou, who was watching the training with him. After a moment of silence, Yu Rou nodded and said, Yes, but I want you to train me, brother. If you think I'll go easy on you because you're my beloved sister. Yuan showed her a cold smile that sent shivers throughout her entire body. That's not it, nor do I want you to go easy on me. I want you to train me because I want to be trained by the very best, even if it'll be many times more painful. Yuan spoke with clenched fists. As expected of my sister. Yuan's smile became warmer, and he continued, all right. I'll train you, but don't you dare complain to me later about it being too difficult. Don't look down on me, brother. I am no longer the pampered little princess I was before. Yuan spoke with a serious expression. Follow me. Yuan brought Yuan back to his residence since the training ground there was already fully occupied. Are you ready? Yuan asked her once they were at the training ground. I am. Yuan nodded. Then let's get this party started. In the following minutes, Yuan experienced complete hopelessness as Yuan delivered a beatdown she would never be able to forget. If it weren't for the protection formation, she would have died over 100 times every few minutes. Of course, Yuan didn't just silently beat her. Once Yuan started getting used to it, he began correcting her mistakes and giving her opportunities to counter him. Time felt exceedingly slow for the members of Eternal Lotuses since they were constantly in pain. The trial boot camp only lasted 3 hours. Yet, by the end, everyone felt like they had been tortured for 3 days straight. There were no visible injuries on the participants, but as if their bodies had memorized the pain, they would occasionally feel the sensation of phantom blows striking them even long after the training ended. Will this really help us get stronger? I feel like we're just being practice dummies. One of them voiced her concerns. What would they gain from lying to us? Let's just trust in the process. I am already exhausted from just 3 hours. I don't know if I can endure 3 whole days of this torture, even if it's just once a month. Sometime later, Bai Lianhua gathered all of her members. Yuan had to carry Yuan back because she was so utterly drained that even the mere act of lifting a finger seemed insurmountable. So, what do you all think of the boot camp? Yuan asked everyone there with a calm smile on his face. After a moment of awkward silence, someone responded, it was really difficult. With the floodgates opened, more and more of them started complaining. Difficult is an understatement. Are you sure you're not just torturing us for fun? How will this help us get stronger? After listening to all of the complaints, Yuan spoke, since I can only prove its effect with results, let's do this. If you have endured 3 sessions of boot camp straight without very clear and satisfying results, I will give you an ancient grade technique or treasure as an apology. After hearing this, the audience's faces immediately lit up with excitement. However, once they recalled their experience during the trial, their expressions quickly turned dreadful once more. Seeing this, Bai Lianhua stepped forward and said, once again, participation is not mandatory. However, if you wish to rapidly advance and rise above the crowd, this will be the most effective method. Personally, I will be participating in the boot camp. In the last 3 hours, I have gained more experience than in the past year. You may not see any improvements right now, but that doesn't mean you haven't improved at all. Take your time to think this through. You have plenty of time until the next session, Yuan told them. After the gathering, the Demon's Ceiling faction returned to their residence while Yuan went to the peak of the mountain to pick up Ji Ran, who had been restoring the Lord's cultivation for the last few days. As always, thank you for the assistance. The Lord thanked Ji Ran. I am only doing my duty. Ji Ran responded. Once he returned to Yuan's dantian, Ji Ran went into a deep slumber to recover. How are you doing in the 9 heavens? The Lord suddenly asked Yuan. Things are getting complicated, but I'm doing fine otherwise. Complicated? How? The Lord inquired, his interest piqued. Chapter 1589 Silhouettes, End of Arc. Chapter 1589 Silhouettes, End of Arc. After hearing the Lord's inquiry, Yuan said, well, some people think I am a demon because of my regenerative abilities, and I can't really blame them either. A demon, huh? That's quite troublesome. The Lord mumbled with a frown. It's fine for now since they don't know my identity, but it won't stay like that forever. Is that so? How about your progress finding the Dragon Spiral Mountain? The Lord then asked. Yuan's eyes widened after being reminded of the Dragon Spiral Mountain, the one that existed within the 9 heavens. I actually forgot about that. Yuan said. In order to travel to the 9 heavens with his real body, he must find and activate the teleporter, which exists in a second Dragon Spiral Mountain somewhere between the 4th heaven and the 7th heaven. I might need to make a second trip to the Pavilion of Knowledge. He muttered. Even if you find it, I would be surprised if the gate is still functional. The Lord suddenly said. What makes you think that? I would be hard-pressed to believe the Celestial Emperor hadn't tampered with it since it might affect his plans. After all, we would be able to travel there with our real bodies, and I am not sure if that's part of the Celestial Emperor's plans. That makes sense. Yuan mumbled. I guess we'll find out once I go there. By the way, why are there 2 Dragon Spiral Mountains, and what are their purposes? They were created before the Divine Heaven became the 9 heavens, correct? There are actually 3 Dragon Spiral Mountains in existence, and they were created to honor the Dragons of Origins, each representing a dragon of origin. The one we're on right now was heavily damaged during the divide and used to be much bigger and grander. The second one was completely destroyed after a certain incident long before the divide. The third one should be safe, but as I said, I wouldn't be surprised if the Celestial Emperor did something with it. Oh, in case you're interested, our Dragon Spiral Mountain is meant to honor the dragon ancestor. The Great One's mountain was the one that got demolished. The last one is for Dragon Goddess Biyao. Anyway, other than being used to honor the dragons of origins, they were also used as a means of travel by the beast clans, mostly dragon clans. The Divine Heaven was an unfathomably vast world before the divide, so these teleporters were important for travel back then. Yuan nodded and said, makes sense. The 9 heavens is still massive even though it's split into 9 different realms. There are teleport formations in almost every city nowadays, too. Sometime later. Anyway, I will update you when I find the Dragon Spiral Mountain, Yuan said to the Lord before returning home. After dinner, as they walked back to their room, Chu Liuxiang suddenly stopped in front of their room and turned to look at Yuan, who was right behind her. Lulu? Yuan raised an eyebrow. I heard what Yuro said a few days ago, she said. About it being unfair to Meishio that only I get to share a room with you despite both of us being your partner. Yuan tried to respond but was immediately stopped by Chu Liuxiang. I already spoke with Meishio about it, and I asked her if she wanted to move in with us. We have plenty of room in the bed, after all. I agreed. Meixia's voice resounded from behind. Yuan turned around to see Meishio approaching them with a resolute expression on her slightly rosy face. Is that so? Yuan mumbled with a smile on his face. As for my old room, we can use it for, for when we want to do more than just sleep together. Chu Liuxiang, who was much bolder, finished Meixia's sentence. Are you okay with that? Meishio asked Yuan. He quickly nodded, of course. Why wouldn't I? That night, Meishio moved most of her belongings into Yuan's room, and the 3 of them slept together. Meishio and Chu Liuxiang decided to continue their training since they were close to a breakthrough. The next day, they logged into Cultivation Online together. Meishio and Chu Liuxiang decided to continue their training since they were close to a breakthrough. Yuan prepared to revisit the Pavilion of Knowledge to ask about the Dragon Spiral Mountain. However, before he could go anywhere, a familiar figure appeared before him. How did you find me? Yuan asked the tall and bulky figure in front of him. As a commander, I have the location of every faction member below me at my palms, Kellen calmly explained. Did you just come back from your world? I have been waiting here for a few days now. Yes. Yuan was a little speechless since this was the first time he was greeted in such a manner. Since you know him from Earth, it's safe to assume you're not cursed. Kellen nodded. I am from the upper heavens, after all. Anyway, what you up to now? Why does it sound like you'll be following me? Yuan asked with raised eyebrows. Because I will, for your protection. If you aren't aware, the Demon Sealing Clan and the Demon Sealing Grotto decided to send their top demon sealers to hunt you down after hearing about you. They're moving faster than I'd anticipated. Yuan mumbled. That's just how dangerous they deemed you. Kellen sighed. Oh well. I'll deal with it when the time comes. Anyway, do you happen to know a place called the Dragon Spiral Mountain? Yuan suddenly asked, changing the subject. Kellen raised an eyebrow and said, How do you know that place? Aren't you from the lower heavens? So you do? Of course. It's a pretty famous place in the seventh heaven, sacred, even. I see, so it's in the seventh heaven. I guess I don't have to worry about it for a while. Why are you asking? Kellen asked. Just curious. I learned about it from the Pavilion of Knowledge. Yuan said. Anyway, you asked what I am going to do now, right? I am going to hunt some magical beasts. Do you know a good hunting spot? He continued. Kellen shrugged. You're asking the wrong guy. This is my first time in the fourth heaven. I thought so. Then I'll go ask around. Meanwhile, somewhere in the nine heavens, two silhouettes were chatting away while surrounded by a chaotic energy that would kill even immortals. Did you hear? The Demon Sealing Clan and the Demon Sealing Grotto have sent the majority of their top demon sealers to the lower heavens. This is our chance to make a move. Finally. We have been waiting for this moment for countless years. Once we summon the Ancient, the Demon Clan will rule over this world again. Where's Demon Emperor Carnage? I haven't seen him for a while now. I have no clue, but he was uttering some nonsense about the Divine Paragon before disappearing. He'll show up once we start the summoning ritual. Then let's begin. I cannot wait to take my revenge on the Demon Sealing Clan. Without the Divine Paragon, they're just a bunch of nobodies. Even if the Divine Paragon were still here, he'd be no match against the Ancient. Ha ha ha. He he he. These two silhouettes soon vanished, their laughter echoing eerily until they were completely gone. Chapter 1590 Endless Beast Den. Chapter 1590 Endless Beast Den, a place with a lot of magical beasts, huh? An information broker pondered Yuan's inquiry. After a brief pause, he said, I know of the perfect place. It's called the Endless Beast Den, and as the name suggests, an inexhaustible horde of magical beasts constantly emerges from its depths. He continued, nobody knows why this is happening, but it's a very famous location for cultivators to train. The only downside is that the magical beasts there never drop cores. That said, there are always people there training all year round. Due to its popularity, unless you belong to a powerful sect or have an influential background, you will have trouble hunting there without being confronted by others. Where is this place located? Yuan asked. After receiving the location, Yuan paid the information broker several spirit stones for his services. Thank you for your business. The information broker bowed to Yuan. To think the fourth heaven would also have a place like this. Kellen muttered a moment later. Yuan looked at him and asked, is there a place like this in the upper heavens? Yes, there are many. Some say the heavens birthed them, while others claim they come from another world, one that is ruled by magical beasts. Unfortunately, all we know for certain is that no matter how many of them you kill, there will always be more. Sounds like the perfect place for me. Yuan smiled. Before they made their way to the Endless Beast Den, Yuan went to pick up Shimeli, who had been visiting every restaurant in the city. Oh, you're back already? Shimeli was in the middle of stuffing her mouth with food when Yuan appeared before her. Yuan smiled and said, take your time. While they waited for Shimeli to finish her meal, Yuan explained the situation to her. I see, the Endless Beast Den, huh? This is my first time hearing about such a place, so this is going to be a new experience, she said. By the way, who's your new friend? She merely asked with her gaze on Kellen. Kellen, and under the orders of my superiors, I am here to protect him. He's from the same faction as me, the Celestial Overlords, Yuan said. You need protection? She merely looked at Yuan with raised eyebrows. He was powerful enough to kill someone 9 realms above his own cultivation. What could possibly threaten him in the fourth heaven? Because of your friend's rash and reckless action, he's now being hunted by the Demon's Sealing Clan and the Demon's Sealing Grotto, who thinks they're hunting a powerful demon. How powerful are they? She merely asked. They're experts that specialize in demons, but they're also some of the most powerful cultivators in the 9 heavens, since the ones coming after Yuan are top demon sealers. However, as long as I am here, they won't be able to do a thing to Yuan. Kellen patted his chest with a confident aura around his large body. Yuan stared at Kellen with a pondering expression. After a moment of silence, he asked, I have been wondering about this for a while now, but you're unusually large. Are you related to giants or something? Kellen's eyes widened with surprise after hearing Yuan's question, and he immediately responded, You know about giants? Why do you look so surprised? Are they supposed to be a secret or something? Yuan asked. No, but their race went extinct countless years ago, and barely anyone remembers them anymore, even in the upper heavens. You're also the first one to ask me such a question. Everyone else just assumes my size is due to a unique physique. So you're a giant. Kellen didn't immediately respond and appeared to be pondering whether he should tell the truth or not. Eventually, he sighed, I'm not a giant, but I do have giant blood flowing through my veins. Huh? How does that work? Just like how some humans inject themselves with the blood of a beast to gain unique powers, I was injected with giant blood, Kellen said. One of the main reasons humans hunted dragons in the past was to harvest their powerful bloodlines to use for themselves. Giants went extinct countless years ago, right? How did you acquire their blood? She merely asked, her eyes filled with interest, as this was her first time learning about the existence of giants. Though they may have gone extinct, remnants of their blood still exist, albeit in extreme rarity. In fact, you're more likely to encounter dragon blood than giant blood in these times, Kellen remarked. My family happened to have some in their possession, and it was used on me due to my high compatibility. Anyway, enough about me. Tell me more about yourself and your world, Yuan. Kellen looked at him. Sure, but I have one more question. The superior who told you to protect me, was it Senior Bai? Kellen nodded, yes, but it was also a request from Celestial Overlord Su. I see. Yuan proceeded to introduce himself from scratch. Sometime later, the 3 of them left the restaurant and made their way to the Endless Beast Denver. After traveling for several days straight and using multiple teleporters, they finally arrived at the Howling Mountain Valley. In this region, a dozen mountains pierced the clouds, and loud howling echoed from every direction. There's a lot of magical beasts here, all right, Kellen said after sweeping the place with his divine sense. Yuan quickly located the Endless Beast Den with his divine sense and flew straight there. The Endless Beast Den was a vast cave nestled within one of these mountains, from which magical beasts constantly emerged. Right outside the Endless Beast Den lay a spacious, suspiciously empty expanse of land. It seemed as if someone had purposefully cleared the area to create a training ground. Moreover, there were already several hundred people there, all of them engaged in fights with magical beasts. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.